and welcome to Planning East today. It's a rather an unusual start. I'm Paula Goddard, the legal advisor. Usually we would have a chair and vice chair sat up here. Unfortunately, the chair has sent apologies today, and we don't currently have a vice chair. So if I can ask members, councillors, we require a proposal and a seconder for a chair to chair the meeting today. So if I can, to Councillor Lovell.
Thank you, legal advisor. I'd like to propose Councillor Rob Reid as chair of this meeting today.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton. Seconded by Councillor Ashton. So if you can take a vote on having Councillor Rob Reid as chairman today. Okay, unanimous? Yeah. So if Rob would like to join me up here, and then when he gets here, he can decide whether he wants a vice chair today. And if he does, we'll take another vote. We'll have a proposal and a seconder for the vice chair, please.
Thank you very much.
Rob. Give him a second to get
geared up.
Conversant with all the papers around him.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your confidence. I will do my utmost. But as for chairing planning meetings, I'm, as you appreciate, a bit of a novice, so I would like the help of a vice chair. So do we have any nominations for a vice chair, please?
I nominate Adam Boyden, please.
Thank you. Have you seconder? Seconder for Steve. Are all in favour? Thank you. Could you come up, Adam, please?
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. As the legal advisor said, our chair isn't with us today for family reasons, and the reason we don't have a vice chair is because he, as we know, Councillor Tony Robbins sadly passed away. He was a very well-respected a long-serving member from Wells, very hard-working, as I say, well-respected chap, sadly passed away. So I wonder if we could join with me in having a minute's silence in reflection of the work he's done. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And welcome to the planning meeting for April. This meeting is taking place in the Council Chambers, Shepton Mallet, And we have members of the Planning Committee, officers, public speakers and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. There are cameras within the council chamber which allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware they may be recorded, even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, please let us know. Members who have brought their own device with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off. And very importantly, the device microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of this meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any other member of public viewing by Teams or within the council chamber to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the Planning Committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch the attention of myself, the Vice Chair, the Legal Advisor or lead officers. When members in the chamber speak, please remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything, and all contributions must be made verbally. And can all mobile phones please be set to silent? Thank you. Can we move on now to apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just before I give apologies, could I just ask Ellen O'Grady, who's joined online, to put her camera off, although we can't see you, you actually will be displaying at home on the screen. Thank you. So we've got apologies from a number of councillors today. We have Councillor Philip Ham and we have Councillor Alistair Hendry, who will sub. Councillor Ros Wyke and we have Councillor Steve Ashton to sub. Also apologies from Councillors Susanna Hart and Barry Clark. No substitutes for them. And Mr Ross, who's appeared on our screens, could you put your camera off as well, please? Thank you, Mr Ross. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Can we move on then to minutes from the previous meeting? Have we all read them? Do we want to go through them? Or are we happy, or should I do them page by page? Can we have a nomination then to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Okay, Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Dimery. Are we all in favour? Yeah, that's passed. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. No declarations of interest, that's good. So we'll move on to public question time, and we have one. We have a question from Selwood Parish Council. Hang on just a second, I'll check with the legal officer. We've got no one to speak, have we? They're not asking the question. No. So can I just read the question 1 and 2? Yeah. Okay, thank you. The question from Selwood Parish Council. I'll do this one. Question 1. Got 2 questions. Question 1. Please can you advise Selwood Parish Council what the reasons were and who made Somerset Council's decision not to enforce with regards to the temporary injunction, plus no enforcement with regards to this destruction of the TPO'd woodland and the blatant planning breaches regarding unlawful development. Following a 9-point planning refusal, which could all have been removed from the site under section 55 of the Town and Country Planning Act. And question 2, the Forestry Commission's enforcement team are looking at a potential prosecution regarding this matter and will accordingly insist on the restocking of the woodland. Do Somerset Council accept that the Forestry Commission has precedent to replant the woodland over any intention the LPA may have to prioritise the creation of a traveller pitch, and in brackets endorsing criminal activity, i.e. felling large number of mature and TPO trees unlawfully, while at the same time stating that we are in a climate emergency? I have a response that I shall be
Chair.
reading out.
Can I have a point of order, please? Can I ask what it is with regard to, because we don't have a context?
Okay, this is regarding Titherington Copse, following felling in 2020 without a licence and the illegal felling of TPO trees. Is that okay? Thank you very much. So, response to question 1. The local planning authority is still within the legal process of pursuing the breaches of planning control, with the decision on that application being the next step in the process of pursuing legal action. Please refer to the agenda of applications for consideration at today's meeting. And question 2, given the LPA's response to question 1 above and the continued pursuit of the breaches of planning control through the legal system, the Forestry Commission will be able to pursue any legal action that they consider appropriate. Please again refer to the agenda of applications for consideration at today's meeting. And as it says, legal proceedings are continuing, so we will say no more. We have answered the question. So we then move on to agenda item 5, planning application, land at Moorland Road Street, Somerset. And I'll find my list. Who is introducing this one? Is that Anna? Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is application reference 2025-0646 out, and it is land at Moorland Road Street. The proposal is for outline planning permission, with some matters reserved for the erection of up to 65 dwellings, of which 30% are affordable housing, with vehicular access from Moorland Road, public open space, landscaping, sustainable drainage system, package treatment plant and associated works with details of access. Matters reserved are appearance, scale and layout. So this shows the location of the site, which lies to the north of street. And this slide shows it in relation to the development limit for street, which is the red line there. So you can see that it sits to the north, but outside, but adjacent to the development limit. And then we've got an... Sorry, now we've got an aerial photo showing the outline of this site in red, and the blue line is additional land to the west, which is proposed BNG mitigation land. So you can see that you've got the existing built-up area to the south. To the east, you've got the street allotments and the street recycling centre. And then you've got some wooded area that runs to the north, and then a more open aspect to the west. Here's a photograph taken from the northeastern corner, looking towards the existing built development at Moorland Road and Mendip View. And another photo from the opposite side, the northwestern corner, looking across the extent of the site. Oops, sorry. And then a third picture taken from the northwestern corner, looking south to the existing development, and then also up to Cemetery Lane. So the principle of development in relation to the local plan core policies, the site, as I've said, is located outside but adjacent to the development limit of street. Street is identified within the local part 1 as a principal settlement. There's been the under-delivery of housing for street and the significant 5-year supply shortfall in the east area overall are pertinent here. For more than 5 years have passed since the adoption of the local plan part 1, the housing requirements not being reviewed, and the authority cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply. Therefore, the proposed development is considered to accord with the overall spatial strategy in Core Policy 1, despite being outside the development limit. And the principle of a development in relation to the MPPF and PPG. The Somerset East area can only currently demonstrate 2.84 years in relation to the 5-year housing land supply, and therefore the tilted balance is engaged. And here planning should only be refused if there's a significant and demonstrable harm that outweighs the public benefit. In relation to the quantum of development, the application originally came in with a quantum of up to 71 dwellings, and it included an indicative layout. After receiving comments from the council's landscape and placemaking officer, who indicated that this amount of development, i.e. 71 dwellings, was too high, and she recommended that a reduction was needed in order to allow for good design principles to be met at reserve matter stage. In response to this, the quantum of development has been revised to a figure of up to 65 dwellings, and the landscape and placemaking officer was content with the revised figure. The site is therefore considered to be capable of delivering up to 65 dwellings. In terms of biodiversity net gain, as I said previously, the blue line on the map there indicates the proposed off-site BNG mitigation site. So this whole area outlined in blue is to be used as BNG mitigation. The total on-site and off-site mitigation will equate to a net gain of 47.46%, and this is secured through the Section 106. Due to its location, the site is also required to provide phosphate mitigation, and this will be mitigated through land use changing from grazing to wildflower meadow on land nearby, and that's indicated to the east, that large site, area outlined in red. Access and parking. The access is proposed from Moorland Road. Somerset Highways have raised no objection to this. The proposal would result in double yellow lines along a section of Moorland Road to prevent parking and to ensure traffic flow. Access and parking was raised as one of the main issues for residents through the consultation. And in relation to drainage, the site lies within flood zone 1. Concern has been raised relating to surface water flooding. The LLFA and the Internal Drainage Board are both now satisfied with the proposals, and detailed drainage scheme is required through the pre-commencement conditions. In terms of the Section 106 heads of terms, there is...
Are you able to hear us now at home?
Yes, thank you, Helen.
Alerting us, Daniel.
Okay, well, thank you, and apologies for the delay. First of all, Mr Lovell, I believe, wants to come in. Councillor Lovell.
Thanks, Chair. I did consult with somebody in the room just now. I realised that I should declare an interest on this one, and that one of the applicants is related to me, but I'm not going to not take part because I have no connection with this particular ownership of this particular land, or I just feel it ought to be. I ought to be on record there, and I will partake in the.
Fair enough. So you can speak and vote.
I will. I intend to speak and vote, but I think it ought to be declared. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Moving on then, we have an objector, a local resident. He's not here today. He's asked us to read out his speech, so I will do that one.
Just to say, he is here, Chair, but he'd rather you declare. He is in the audience.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Dobbins. Yes, would you like to read it out, or would you? That's perfectly fine. So this is from Mr. Dobbins. Good afternoon. I'm speaking today to urge you to refuse this application. My objection is based on a fundamental failure to meet national safety standards regarding the access road width. I ask why Moorland Road when you have a road off Strawberry Hill that already has a built-in sympathetic speed-reducing feature, and the positioning of the road would give vehicles the ability to stay on the outer circle of the estate to gain access, and in turn reducing risks that this plan is clearly creating. This road is already at the required measurements and compliant to national design guidance. I strongly advise you to consider this route in. This impact to home owners and the estate will also be reduced. The core legal argument is that paragraph 115 of the NPPF is clear. Development should be refused on highways ground if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. This is a directive. By approving a site with a known underwidth access road, this does not align with the national design guidance. This committee would knowingly create a permanent safety hazard that directly contradicts national policy. The planned access road in question measures only 5 metres and paths under 2 metres. The minimum required for a collector road as proposed is 5.5 metres and to have pedestrian paths at 2 metres. Proposed yellow lines along Moorland Road, you will be moving an existing parking problem to a further condensed area with an already unacceptable impact on safety, a further hazard to road users and pedestrians, with active travel being promoted. Evidence submitted shows cars parking on both sides of the road, on grass verges and paths, limiting the width to a dangerous level of under 3.7 metres, mandatory minimum for emergency fire appliances. This is a life safety issue that goes beyond mere inconvenience. The unacceptable harm on highway safety outweighs any benefits. If 2 vehicles cannot pass, we will see dangerous reversing, conflict between users, and where a single delivery van could block access for emergency services. All failures of paragraph 115 and the NPPF requirements to prioritise vulnerable road users. The applicant may argue that traffic increase isn't severe. However, paragraph 115 provides 2 separate tests for refusal to show we are already experiencing unacceptable impact on safety, starting from the top of Grange Avenue. Can I ask, as part of paragraph 115, where are the results of a vision-led mitigation for transport impact, so we can understand that the results are not merely a prediction of traffic increase? An increase in traffic is unacceptable if the road is physically incapable of accommodating it safely. Safety is an absolute, not a matter of volume. Approving this would delegate a safety crisis to future residents and the public purse. If a fire engine not fit for a child is forced into the path of a car, the planning balance will have failed, and I ask you to uphold paragraph 115 and refuse this application on the grounds of an unacceptable impact on highway safety and access road width. Thank you very much, Mr. Dobbins. We now go on to, we're lucky enough to have the local council here, Councillor Station. would you please come forward and let us know your views? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Liz Leish and I'm one of the 2 division members for Street. Chair, I feel for full disclosure I should inform the committee that when I was a Mendip councillor, I was working on corporate projects, including social housing, and this is one of 3 sites that we looked at in Street. We concentrated our efforts on Cemetery Lane, where I'm really hopeful we'll have some spades in the ground very soon. So of the 3 sites, there was this one in Moorland Road, Crown Hill Road, car park, a portion of, and Cemetery Lane. So it was Cemetery Lane that we progressed. We still have demand for housing in Street. You may recall that an application went through for 280 homes. We're still waiting for that to commence because of concerns. My concerns on road access north of the bypass are on the planning portal for members to have seen. We have had a major piece of work going on the bypass since the turn of the new year. I'm pleased to say that's nearly complete now. That will be new traffic lights, total resurfacing and a new active travel path. That will be finished by the end of this month. There are 2 routes into this site. One is by Grange Avenue, which has been inconvenienced by the roadworks on the A39, and the other is through Cemetery Lane. My other point on the planning portal is about play parks, as Street Parish Council has done a very good and strategic piece of work on the play parks in Street, and they have now taken on a number of them through a devolution deal with Somerset Council. And so I'm really hoping that as developments come forward in Street, rather than creating further small play parks, that instead effort and funding can be put towards play parks, including that at Woods Batch, which is near this development site, this proposed site, and that will then enable the parish council to improve that smaller number of play parks and actually replace equipment and keep them in good condition. So whilst I completely accept that we still need more housing in Street. Every time I walk down the high street, I am asked, particularly by young people, when there may be housing in Street that they can actually afford, either to rent or to buy. I believe that I have made my concerns known to the committee through the planning portal and ask for your consideration, please, particularly on provision of any further play parks and working with the parish council as effectively as possible in the future. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And now we have Matthew Halstead, who is here, who is the applicant on behalf of Crossman Acquisitions Limited. 3 minutes, Mr. Halstead.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Matthew Halstead, co-owner of Crossman Acquisitions. The application is in outline with all matters reserved aside from access. Therefore, the only consideration for members is the principle of development and the proposed access. Matters such as the design of the housing and parking will be addressed at reserved matters stage. Dealing first with the principle. As one of Mendip's 5 largest settlements, Street is the focus of housing delivery. The local plan requires 1,300 dwellings to be delivered at Street by 2029. Based on the current rate of housing delivery, this target will not be met until 2035, 6 years behind schedule. The real-world effect of this is that approximately 600 individuals in need of homes cannot access housing in Street. This development would provide homes for 147 of those 600 people, roughly 1/4. Therefore, the principle of this development is acceptable. Turning to the access, this would comprise a simple extension of Moorland Road into the site and its associated upgrade. The proposal also includes the reinstatement of a continuous footway along Moorland Road, along with double yellow lines, thereby encouraging residents to park their cars on their drives as opposed to the road. These measures will improve pedestrian safety. The principle of the access proposals was agreed with highway officers at pre-application stage. Officers are satisfied that the highway network has capacity to accommodate the development and that the proposal will result in localised highway improvements. Therefore, they are supportive of the application. A contributing factor for the delayed delivery of housing at street are the planning constraints around the town. Much of the surrounding land is in the floodplain or subject to landscape designations. This site is one of the few that is not subject to any of those constraints. It is well contained in the landscape and would form a logical and modest extension to the existing housing estate. We therefore feel that the proposal is technically sound. This is a position shared by officers. Working in collaboration, we have taken on board officer advice and sought to refine the scheme where possible. This included a reduction in the overall quantum of housing proposed. As a consequence, the application is now subject to no objections from officers and benefits from a recommendation to approve permission. The development provides additional benefits beyond housing, such as the creation of 138 full-time jobs during the construction phase, a biodiversity net gain of 47%, 20 affordable homes, and a financial contribution towards Woods Batch Play Park. We are also in discussion with Street Allotment Association and Wessex Water to hopefully provide much needed running water and electricity to the adjacent allotments. The development is needed, it is in the right location, and it is technically sound. I therefore respectfully request that members uphold the recommendation of officers and grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halstead. Before we go to the debate, I'm going to ask the officers to comment on the access road because that is the main objection, I think. The objector said that there's it's only 5 metres too small, pass under 2 metres too small. So would anybody like to comment on that?
I think that's been passed to me, Mr. Chairman. Whilst technically a collector road should be 5.5 metres long, there is allowance for opinion and for the level of vehicle movements to be taken into account. For up to 65 dwellings, the Highway Authority doesn't have an objection for that length of road to be 5 metres. 5 metres still allows an HGV to pass a car. 5.5 metres would allow 2 HGVs to pass each other, but that's very unlikely in this scenario to have a need for 2 HGVs to pass. It's going to be an unusual circumstance for that to be the case. With the footway, the existing footway as it is down that section of Moorland Road, which will be included to be made a consistent footway from Mendip View right the way down the eastern edge of Moorland Road. It is 1.8 metres wide. There is no additional land to make that 2 metres wide. 1.8 metres is acceptable as a footway where it is an existing footway. Our minimum requirements now would be 2 metres, but it exists, and therefore without reducing the width of the road further, which would therefore be an unacceptable width of road down Moorland Road, we wouldn't be able to request that footway is widened.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the debate. So we have got outline planning permission for 65 dwellings, and there is an objection with regard to the access, and you've heard the answer. So does anybody got any questions or are supporting it or rejecting it? Over to you. Okay, Councillor Demery.
Just concerned, this is on peatland, isn't it? Big carbon sink on peatland, and once you start upsetting it, removing it, it releases huge amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere. Or is it methane? I think it's both, isn't it? Has any consideration been made regarding that in terms of the sort of ecological damage that would cause?
Thank you, Councillor Dimmery. As far as we know, it's not on peatland. In terms of the characteristics of the land, I can tell you it's flood zone 1. In terms of the sort of soil classifications, we have looked at the kind of general classifications, and yeah, it's agricultural land classification 4, so it's not in that best and most versatile categorisation. Peatland, I don't have any further information for you, I'm afraid.
Any other questions? Councillor Kay.
Thank you. I thought I read in one of the objections that it was on peatland, and yeah, it says it apparently on the consultee comments and Street Parish Council that it's on peatland. So because of that, I was going to ask a question about soil. If we agree for it to go ahead, about an extra condition that might be added. Apparently, there is some guidance about how to preserve soils during construction, and I'm just wondering if we could make that apply here. Now, all soil is a carbon sink, and any development will release, when you start building houses, will release carbon. In my area, I've got a lot of houses being built, and I asked an officer a few years ago, could we bring in this guidance to ask if builders could, you know, be more careful with soil, because what they often do is just strip everything back, pile it all on one side, do all their foundations and everything, and then put some of the soil back and the topsoil. So they really don't take much notice of looking after the soil. But in this case, I think it is peat, and it's a special case, and whether or not, well, going back to my area, the officer felt that it was too onerous to ask the developers to do that. These developers have actually got excellent sustainability criteria for their houses. They've got excellent glazing, solar panels, the whole works, you know, air source heat pumps, I think, as well. So if they appear to care about sustainability, could we ask them to also look after the soil whilst they are doing the works? That's my first question, and I mean, I would like to also make a comment about access, the children's playground, and conditions for permeable paving. But shall we answer that one first? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks for the further question, Councillor Kay. It's obviously something that we haven't sort of thought of as of yet. So I'm trying to sort of think about how best we would deal with it. Obviously, you know, peat extraction is not something that's encouraged these days, and you know, if that were something that was a bit more at the forefront, we might have had a bit more of an answer from you. But I still think it's something that could be dealt with at this stage. I'm thinking perhaps something along the lines of probably both part of the construction management plan, but also just in terms of the kind of general soil and land investigations that happens as part of the development of a site like this. So I think there is a way that we could deal with it through probably a sort of preliminary investigation, condition and follow-ups as required. But what I would suggest to members is if you let us have a little bit more of a think about it while the debate is ongoing, and we either can propose something when members get to the point they would like to vote on a resolution or not, or alternatively, in consultation with the chair, we could come up with a condition that would capture what your concerns are in terms of the peat, because also, given that we're, as officers, not sure about the conditions on the ground at the moment, we wouldn't just want to slap a condition on that was perhaps overly onerous if there is no peat there currently. So I think it probably need to be a bit of a two-stage process, some sort of investigation and follow-up as required. And yeah, we'll come back if that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. I suppose that, I mean, the Street Parish Council is saying it's peat, so it does need to be checked, obviously. But if it is, I wonder if some reference to that guidance on looking after soils in when doing construction work could be made. So my other comment, so following on from that, is that some people are saying that it's a very wet site. And I see that you are planning to raise the level of all the houses 30 centimetres above the current ground level in order just to be set on the safe side in case of any flooding in the future. There's something in here which I'd not come across before, which was called tanked permeable paving, which is apparently permeable paving down to a certain level, and then underneath the ground it's tanked. But that will involve removing the topsoil, the peat topsoil, to put the tank in, to put the impermeable layer in, and then it's going to go off somewhere else. So I'm just, but nowhere does it actually say. If you actually look at the map, I don't think we saw an illustrative map of what it was going to look like. But there are, if you look at the illustrative map of what it could look like, and I realise this is just an outline application, it shows that there's more hard surfaces, tarmac and car parking spaces and road than there is space for housing. Right, so there's quite a lot of the site is going to be hard standing. And so I want to make sure that there is permeable paving. I've gone through where it can be put in. I've gone through the conditions, and it isn't clear under any of the conditions. There's condition 16 relates to SUDS design, 17 relates to sustainable surface water drainage, 19 relates to surface water drainage scheme implementation, 20 relates to surface water strategy, and 22 relates to internal road footways and cycleways, and in none of them does it say that there should be permeable paving. I don't know if I need to have a proposal to get permeable paving actually written in here, or whether or not, and I need a seconder for that, or whether or not that's something that officers can just reassure me that that will be considered. Thank you. That's my second question.
Thank you, Councillor Kay. In terms of the approach to drainage and the permeable paving and such that you raise, it's a sort of two-part response. So you've mentioned a number of the conditions, and there are quite an extensive number of conditions that relate to SUDS and other drainage matters at this stage. So what those are doing is basically securing or recognising the need for that, and then the detail of that would come in the reserved matters, but then also after, if it gets to that stage, after reserved matters consent is granted, the applicant would submit further details through discharge conditions, and that would be signed off by the LLFA. In terms of having to get that locked in, as you say, that's in terms of the permeability, that's all a kind of good practice, good principles of drainage. So that's the sort of thing we would normally expect to be submitted as part of the reserved matters application, and again, the discharge conditions. So that's something that we would actually be looking at a later stage rather than needing to lock it in now beyond the conditions as proposed.
It does seem odd that we're locking in lots of other things, like for example, having solar panels. I think that's locked in somewhere, and various other things are locked in. But permeable paving is not locked in at this stage.
So if I can come back again, yeah. So what we're here to look at today is principally the principle of development, including the access. And we're sort of locking in what we can. So in terms of the drainage, it's a requirement to provide that further detail when we've got all the other details that go around it. So you mentioned the illustrative layout. Obviously at outline stage, that's just what it says. It's illustrative. And the purpose of that is to show that the quantum of development and all the other sort of bits can fit on a site of this size. So it's just a sort of, for illustration only. We're not locking any of that in at this stage. Indeed, we wouldn't want to, because what the applicant hasn't really done at this stage is looked in great detail about how the layout would work, where the best place for the open space would be, the design of the dwellings and all of that. You know, it's just, is the principle of housing on this site a good idea, and is the quantum right? And as you'll have heard from Anna's presentation, the application initially came in for 71 dwellings, and in consultation with our placemaking and landscape officer, we've negotiated reduced quantum down to 65 dwellings. So what we're saying at this stage is we think this site can fit up to 65 on, and so before you is just the sort of principle plus the detail of the access, and then a lot of the other matters are reserved for later consideration. But we're still conditioning that those would happen now. So the solar panels will definitely be on the housing. The question is, you know, how they go. You know, that's a matter for later detail, okay. But it's secured at this point.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, can we?
I've got some.
We'll come back to you, but can we first have a question from Adam? So we.
Oh, sorry, did you want to come in on something else? No.
Sorry, if I may, sorry, just to add to Ed's comments about permeable paving. I'm fairly certain that I've mentioned it before, and if I haven't, I apologise. And if I have, again, I apologise for sounding like a stuck record. Any permeable paving when it comes to footways or highways will not be adopted. We do not have the resource or money to maintain permeable surfacing as an adopted highway. There is no obligation for a developer to put their site up for adoption. Equally, there's no obligation on us, if they do put it up for adoption, to take it. So that doesn't preclude permeable highways or footways. It just precludes adopted permeable highways and footways.
So there is a possibility that there might not be any permeable paving.
There's always a possibility, Councillor Kay. I'm not going to say yes or no definitively on that. As I say, it would depend entirely on whether the applicant wanted to put it forward for adoption. It would also depend what extent of the highway and footway they wanted to put forward for adoption. So there could be a hybrid, if you like. The areas that they don't wish to have adopted or that we wouldn't want to adopt could be permeable. But those that are mutually adoptable wouldn't be able to be.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, that was quite comprehensive. Do we have a proposal or any more questions?
I wouldn't mind coming in.
I did say I did say I had four questions.
First of all, can we go to Adam, please?
Hopefully, I'm covering a couple of things. First one was sorry, my voice is deep today. Sorry, the first question I got was about the play parks. I know Councillor Lation mentioned her preference for funding the play park at Woods Batch instead of another one on site instead. The applicant, the agent, said that they were prepared to agree to that. Can officers confirm that's thought of in a Section 106 agreement that would be the case? And secondly, it's about parking, so I'll come back.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. And yes, so the LEAP, locally equipped area of play, is something that is to be secured through the Section 106. Section 106 is negotiated post-resolution if committees are minded to grant. So that is something that's accounted for, if you like. I don't have the full details. Normally, the way it works is, so we have a policy within the local plan DP16 which secures that type of provision. We've then got an SPD as well, which gives a bit more detail and points to the Fields in Trust guidance, which was updated in 2024, and that sets out general expectations. So we'd normally expect there to be provision on site for equipment for younger children, because while I appreciate there's an existing area of play at Woods Batch, we'd still want some provision on site. So we can look at the exact detail of how that would work in the negotiations of the Section 106.
Thank you. That deals with that, I think. And the second question was about parking. The man who spoke through the chair raised issues of parking as well, I think, and other people in their comments as well about lack of provision potentially and double yellow lines displacing parking from existing street that would go that uses as an access road. Is there any concerns? I note that the report says there's no overall concerns. Can it just all be dealt with under reserved matters and subsequent approvals to the satisfaction of the need for proper parking levels on site? Thanks.
Quite obviously, as a highway authority, we would be looking for a new site to provide adequate parking. That's obviously always in balance with the placemaking principles to make sure that there's not an over-provision of parking, and obviously on a vision-led basis. I note that the comments previously said that the vision-led scheme, sorry, that's not the right word, I'm having a moment, hasn't necessarily been utilised on this application, but it wasn't adopted until after the submission of the application. So again, it's a balancing of decide and provide versus vision-led transport systems. Yes, double yellow lines down the edges of the existing Moorland Road is likely to displace some on-street parking currently being undertaken. Unfortunately, there is no right to park on a highway. That's what traffic regulation orders such as double yellow lines seek to control. The applicant would be required to go for a traffic regulation order to put those double yellow lines in. All of those properties currently facing Moorland Road in the area that would be used as the access point do have off-street parking. Therefore, as a highway authority, I would be advising that maybe those occupants utilise their off-street parking. As a person, I understand that sometimes you have more cars than you have off-street parking. So yes, there will be some displacement of that parking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Helen wants to come back in.
You're sounding weary already. Thank you. Right, I'd like to support what Councillor Lation has said about the children's playground and whether or not that space on the bottom right-hand side, south-east side of the plot, instead of being a children's playground, that could even be open space or allotments. And it's great that there are allotments next door. And I'm just wondering if there is going to be a path through, there could be a path through from here to the allotments. So I'd just like to throw that at the developer as something to consider at reserved matters. Regarding the bat mitigation area or the, what's it called, not BNG, biodiversity net gain area, which is huge, which is great. What I read was that the ecology department felt that, or it might have been about phosphates. Well, that's my first question. I'm a bit mixed up. Are they the same area? Is the BNG area the same as the, okay, I see Ed shaking his head, is different from the phosphates area. Okay, so somebody asked for woodland to be planted, but this is going to be wildlife, wildflowers. And somebody asked if it's going to be wildflowers that there needs to be some kind of condition that they look after it for 80 to 125 years, which is obviously not going to happen. Is there a condition anywhere that shows that they have to look after that for, I think it's 30 years? I wasn't quite sure if I could find the condition that they have to look after that for 30 years. And my last question is, have highways addressed the issues or considered the issues that the first objector raised, which is why this access has to go through Moorlands Road and it cannot come off of Strawberry Hill, why it has to go through an existing estate and upset all the people there. Thank you.
I can take the first couple. With regard to the allotments, I know that the applicant has had conversations with the allotments. Regarding the phosphate mitigation, they're two separate areas of land, the phosphate mitigation and the BNG mitigation. Initially, Natural England were looking at woodland. It's been agreed that it can be wildflower meadow, and that is forming part of the Section 106. So there's no, it's for up to 30 years, I believe.
With regard to the access point, As a planning authority or as a highway authority, we are only able to look at what is put in front of us. The applicants put in front of us access through Moorland Road. They didn't put access through Strawberry Hill Lane Road, sorry, Strawberry, in front of us. Moorland Road was the access point that we considered.
Was there any pre-app?
For Moorland Road, yes.
Okay, so you don't comment and say at that point it might be better if you came in through a different route?
We can do, but as a highway authority, we don't have any issues with access through Moorland Road. So it would be counterintuitive to say, have you considered an alternative route?
Okay, it's been a thorough debate. So have we come to a conclusion? Are we all quite happy? Ed, yes, hello.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on the peat question we had earlier on, we've had a bit of a conversation behind the scenes, and we're of the view that that could best be dealt with through an additional soil management condition. So if members were minded to approve this scheme, then what I would suggest is that we have an additional condition on to secure a soil management plan, and the wording of that condition would be delegated to officers subject to consultation with yourself, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are we happy with that? So can we have a proposal?
Shall I make one?
Adam, yes.
Shall I make a proposal that we give this permission for the reasons set out in the report in accordance with officer recommendations, subject to the additional condition on soil management to be agreed by officers with the chair of committee? Do I have a seconder?
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Lovell. And if we're all quite happy with what we're voting on, we'll go to a vote. Are we all in favour of the proposal? Six.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do it again, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, and against? Anyone against? And any abstentions? 3 of us. 4 of us.
Yeah.
Okay, so that application is approved. Thank you very much indeed. Right, can we move on then, please, to agenda item 6?
Mr. Chairman, I request a quick comfort break, please.
5 minutes.
Sorry.
Okay, folks, is everybody back? I think we are. So can we move on then, please? Thank you very much. Agenda item 6, erection of a new 2-storey self-built dwelling in Falkland. And I believe this is Carlton.
Hello, can you hear me now? Oh. Great. Right, this application is at Woodstock, Back Lane in Falkland. The application site adjoins the development limits in Falkland, and it represents the back garden of Woodstock, detached dwelling with a very substantial garden. So the proposal erection of a new 2-storey self-built dwelling with the detached garage. This is the application site. You can see Woodstock here, large detached property, probably built in around 60s or 70s. We've got a village hall next door, another detached property next door. The general pattern of development is for larger detached properties in this area. These were bungalows built within the farmyard. So you can see how big the application site is and represents the garden of Woodstock. So bit complicated to look at, but this is the existing location plan. So this is the main house with the driveway coming up the side here. And then the garden's divided up into lots of different areas, lawn and flower beds, etc. Vegetable plots down here. The proposal is to sort of separate the existing dwelling over here, try to retain as many of the trees in the garden as possible, and for the erection of a single garage here with access off the road, with parking here, and the dwelling situated at the bottom of the garden to align with the existing developments to the north here, these developments here. The applicant has brought forward a design which is semi-contemporary and a split level proposal with a link extension. So you've got the ground floor, and this is the second floor, which is over this bit here only, and you've got a link extension. So all this is single story, and this is 2-story. The elevations here, I'll just say that the applicant has slightly amended the scheme in terms of the cladding, which you'll see in my report. There was a slight objection to the dark palette of the building. For the timber elements looked like they were going to be quite dark. That's now been amended to put in a much lighter shade of timber. I'll show you some illustrations just now which should hopefully explain that. But that's all your elevations for the building. And this is the single garage, very small. It's been significantly reduced from when the application first came in, so it has limited impact on neighbouring amenity, etc. Right, you'll see there's some concerns from neighbours with regard to the overlooking of their property. I've done an illustration here which shows the neighbouring property in question, one of the bungalows that some time ago had a first floor extension put on it, which is quite unique. But there's a clear separation distance between the proposed scheme and that existing property in around 21 metres, which is considered to be a suitable separation distance, not for there to be a significant overbearing impact. Also, this elevation here is this one here, and you'll notice that there's 3 windows and a door in there. So what we've done is put a condition on, which didn't come through in the report for some reason, I don't know, but we've ensured that these windows are obscure glazed, just to make sure that there's no direct overlooking of their garden. The applicant's very kindly provided sort of an artistic visual. So this is the proposed dwelling at the bottom of the garden. This is the existing dwelling. This is where the garage is. So you'll see it end up with quite a generous garden, and a generous garden afforded to the existing property, and quite a separation distance between there, and some existing hedgerow and new hedgerow planted along here to provide some screening as well. Right, this is a mixture of old visuals and new visuals. So in terms of the palette, which the conservation commented on, that looked a little bit dark, you can see these sort of images here came out very dark when we received them, and they shouldn't have been that dark, and so we've amended them slightly. It sort of gave the impression that this was going to be black timber, which wasn't actually the case. So we're going to get this vertical timber in places and horizontal timber cladding over natural stonework, and it's going to grey down as timber does. So again, reinstituting that sort of light palette that's akin to the village. So here's some site photographs. So this is the host dwelling here. You can see the Parking will be provided for this host dwelling out the front here, so this will be scooped out slightly and 3 parking spaces provided. Then you go up the side of the property here to access the application site, the garage immediately on your right. So this is existing garden at the moment, and views from the bottom of the garden overlooking the fields. So the application is recommended for conditional approval with all the conditions attached. The condition 3 of it requires that the applicants submit samples of materials that they've listed. So just make sure we do get a nice colour for the timber and an appropriate stone that is in keeping with the stone in the village. And as I say, apologise, 3 conditions were missed off your planning report in front of you today. They all relate to permitted development rights being removed. 15, 16 and 17. So obscure glazing on the east elevation up to 1.7 metres above floor level. And then there's no extensions or alterations and no outbuildings unless they apply for planning permission. This concludes it. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. And first of all, to speak, we have an objector. It's Mr. or Mrs. Young. Mrs. Young, please come forward, and you have 3 minutes.
Chair, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Martin and I have never objected in principle to a new dwelling on this site. We are specifically objecting to the design of the eastern elevation and inadequate protection of our amenity. We first raised our concerns at the Parish Council meeting in January 25, over 15 months ago, all of which remain unaddressed. Notice of this meeting came out of the blue, providing very little time to digest the recommendation and obtain advice. Although described as a 2-bedroom dwelling, this is a substantial property, larger in overall floor area than our own 5-bed property. The eastern elevation presents as a dominant, blank, 2-storey structure, approximately 13.5 metres long, finished in a dark wood, according to the plans that we saw. It faced directly towards our main living space and sits only a few metres from our garden boundary. These concerns are compounded materially to us by the change in the ground levels, which are inadequately addressed in the application. The proposed lower ground floor will sit almost 2 metres above our own ground floor level, and the 2-storey elements have an effective height of 6.65 metres. The visual and amenity impact is therefore far greater than the drawings suggest. These aren't theoretical concerns. 2 parish councillors viewed the site from our property and recognised these points in their objection. The Conservation Officer's updated comments maintained concerns regarding the scaling and the impact of large dark massing of the proposed materials. We note a Planning Officer has not viewed the site from our property, where the true impact is most clearly experienced. We note the Planning Officer's report relies on the tilted balance principle caused by the shortfall in the 5-year housing supply in the east. We respectfully ask the Council to consider whether this scheme would be acceptable on its own merits without that housing shortfall, particularly following last week's approval of the Selwyn Garden Community Project. Martin and I have remained open to a constructive discussion and to amendments that would address our concerns. None have been forthcoming. Instead, the proposal has retained its original design, locating the new house and more specifically the 2-storey element on the eastern edge of the applicant's substantial plot. This directly minimises the impact on the applicant's existing property, whilst transferring that impact directly onto ours. In conclusion, this proposal has attracted multiple objections, all consistent with our own. Together, they point to a scheme that does not sit comfortably within its context and fails to protect amenity in conflict with policy DP7. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Young. And next up we have the applicant, agent, Linda Dunn, agent for Whiteacre Planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My clients, Jeff and Christine Hunt, are pursuing the dream of many in this country. They have a large garden and hope to build a home in it for the next stage of their lives. As you know, the government are committed to boosting housing delivery, and an important part of the strategy is support for those wishing to build their own homes. The government's strongly supportive also of good design. Self-building can make a genuine contribution to housing delivery and plays an important role. Self-builders care deeply about their projects. Such homes are of high quality design and are well built. The proposed dwelling has been designed by Orm Architecture, a leading practice in Somerset, and the scheme has been very carefully designed to do the following: to make best use of the site, leaving plenty of garden for the applicants, who are very keen gardeners, ensure the dwelling sits well within the plot, and avoid any amenity issues such as overlooking, overshadowing or loss of privacy. So windows have been carefully placed and the height has been kept to a minimum. Materials will be agreed in due course, but these are likely to be local natural stone and timber cladding. Landscaping can also be conditioned. All existing boundary walls and mature planting will be retained and supplemented. This application was submitted in December 2024. As we're now in April 2026, I think you'll agree that this is some way past the statutory 6 to 8 weeks. Jeff and Christine have been incredibly patient, and I hope they can now move on with their project. Well-designed self-built houses like this are the perfect antidote to poor quality mass house building, and we would be very grateful for your support.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. First of all, question to the planning officer. I have noticed that the conservation area officer has objected. So can you inform the committee whilst you are recommending approval, please?
Right. She, like any consultee, she was consulted on the application and she came back and she had a couple of concerns. One, which I've already explained, is the dark visual impact of it, which essentially came through in those visuals because they came through as very dark. So we've made sure that the dark elements of the scheme are lost, and like the agents just said, we're going to do a local stone in keeping with the area with a light timber above and a zinc roof with a similar palette to that of the other buildings in the village, like similar colour to slate, say. So yeah, I think all those issues have essentially been addressed in terms of the overall appearance, looking rather dark and gloomy in relation to the neighbouring properties. So in balance, we've made a recommendation that the benefits of the scheme in relation to those comments outweighed the concerns.
Thank you very much. Well, this is a site, of course, in the middle of the village, so lots of things to think about here. Does anybody want to ask a question or come up with a view? Adam.
Yeah, thank you. Given the objection from one of the neighbours, and quite a strong one, has that, that's a question for Carlton really, has their concerns been looked at as part of the delayed consideration of this application, and how could they be addressed? I mean, has there been a site visit from, or could there be a site visit from their property to see their points of view and their objection? Is that appropriate? Could that be done if we defer this to allow you to do that? Because so clearly they feel affected by it. It's the scale and the size of the building that faces their property, although it's 20 metres away. Would that possibly be appropriate to do, to have another look at that?
Short answer, no, not really. I've taken everything into consideration. I've done a site visit when I was down on site, so I've been down that bottom of the garden, had a look at everything in context. My illustrations show that there's a very good separation distance, which is the basic norm. It used to be a BS standard of 20 metres, which is acceptable, and you'll notice that the height is 1.5-storey unit is far below that of the existing house on the site, and so in terms of its scale, etc., it's fine. It's not going to have an overbearing impact on that neighbour, and taking away the permitted development rights in terms of the windows, it's not going to have any overlooking impact either.
Okay, thank you. But there's an overlooking in terms of the windows. That was in the report, wasn't it? Could you summarise the controls?
Yeah, I just said they've taken PD rights away to obscure windows in those three windows that are there. So that should alleviate any concerns of overlooking, which are pretty minimal anyway.
Okay, Councillor Kay.
I wonder if you could put up the elevations again, where you show the pictures of what it will look like. Would that be possible? Because I wanted to ask about the zinc roof. So I'm pleased to hear that the timber cladding will not be dark and it's going to be sort of something that goes more silvery. But at the moment, as I understand it, the roofing will be dark, almost black. You've just said something about it looking like slate. I didn't visit this site, but I went on to Street View and I looked at quite a lot of the houses nearby, and they seem to, I didn't see many with slate. They seem to have like red tiles or whatever. So I'm not sure if does slate go slightly greyer or paler as it weathers? I'm not sure. So on here, it shows all the roofs as being white. Well, then they're not going to be white. They're going to actually be, I wanted people to imagine that they're actually going to be almost black. So in terms of whether or not it fits with the surrounding buildings, that's now my main concern. And I don't know if that's possible to ask the developers to consider a different kind of roofing material or not at this stage. Have we just got to look at the thing that's in front of us, or can we make suggestions for alternatives, or can it be when you get the samples come in, can you then comment on it then, for example? Yeah.
Right. First and foremost, you consider the application that's before you, Councillor. So we're not talking about changing anything here. You either refuse it because of the roof, or you approve it because you don't think it's an issue. But in terms of the Conservation's comment about the palette and things being dark, that came from the visuals. So you'll see that condition 3 in the report pack relates to materials and samples of those materials to be agreed. So what we're going to make sure is that the zinc is an appropriate colour that's in keeping with the palette of the village, and also the timber cladding, and making sure that the stone is an appropriate stone as well.
So can I clarify, is zinc can be other colours than black?
Oh, it can be a whole variety of
okay.
palette of colours.
That's very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. The objector wouldn't be going to all this trouble if they thought they couldn't have any changes, because they've clearly absolutely gone to a lot of trouble and effort here. Adam, I take side with him 100% to ask the case officer, why has no site visit from the other side, from the objector's side, been there to look to see what the finished product might look like? I know it's only one house, but we've crossed this bridge so many times and says, look, it's okay, nobody's entitled to a view. We know that, but in this particular case, the objector's obviously got a very nice property. That was there first before this one, and perhaps somebody should, like the case officer, should just take 5 minutes just to go there and have a look to see what they're actually saying. If they come back and say, no, everything's fine, it's absolute, then we have to accept that. Otherwise, I don't know, I do think she's got a good point here, because I know you're not entitled to a view, I do understand that, Chair, but I think she has got a good point. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. And I think Simon wants to come in.
Yeah, members, just to confirm, obviously you've read Colin's report, his recommendation, and he's explained the justification for why he's presenting that. So he's told you about the separation distance. The plans there themselves established the change in levels, so he's been aware of the change in levels, which is something that the neighbour talked about when she made her presentation to you. Effectively, the officer has done an assessment which has been agreed and signed off by the senior officer team, and our recommendation to you is that the development is acceptable. You don't have to agree that recommendation if you consider that the overall height, scale, massing and design is not acceptable. Then obviously you have the opportunity to refuse the application on that basis. You would be going against the officer advice. And again, I think the advice is well reasoned and robust. And again, Carlton's put that slide up there, which shows you the separation distance, picks up the change in ground levels between the two properties. You've heard that there's a control mechanism to ensure that those 3 slit windows on the east elevation will be obscured, and there'll be provision for no further windows on that elevation. So there won't be an overlooking issue. If you think that a separation distance of 21 metres to accept a building of that size and scale in relation to the neighbour is unacceptable, then that could be something that you could refuse the application on.
Okay, well, there we are. Any other questions? Because we are here that the officer is recommending approval, but we can refuse it if we want to. So over to you. Thanks. Councillor Kay.
I'd like to propose that we approve this planning application on the basis that the officer has a good old look at the samples when they come in of the external walls and the roofs and make sure that both are not dark when they come in. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hendry, are you seconding or?
Yeah, I have to second this. Not 100% happy about it. On the balance of probabilities, it has to be seconded by somebody. And yes, we're going to have to go along with it as far as I see it. So I'll second it. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to add that as a condition that the officer look at the colour samples? Or
it's already in there, but I'd like to make sure that they are paler than the illustrations.
Okay, I'm sure the officer's taking notes. Yeah. Adam.
Thank you. Carlton, you mentioned 3 missing conditions. Are those in the report as we see online now? Also, we can't hear you, sorry.
Sorry, when it got brought over to the committee report, they got left off for some reason. I really don't understand, but they're in the tab, ready to be. If you agree permission today, they would go out.
Could you repeat those again or summarise?
So they're all permitted development rights. Okay, so one relates to those windows in the east elevation being obscure glazed. Another relates to no further extensions or alterations to the building without first granting permission, and no further outbuildings within curtilage without first gaining express planning permission.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we have a proposal and a seconder, so there's no further questions. We can go straight to a vote. Are we all in favour of approval? And against? 1 and abstained. Thank you very much. That application is approved. Agenda item number 7, Pines Residential Site, Berkeley Lane, Berkeley.
Chair, can we just interrupt? Councillor Denton needs to...
Sorry, yeah.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to, because I've represented people that live on the Pines and people who don't live on the Pines in this division for 4 years, I think it's better if I recuse myself from this discussion and this vote. It'll just make it, there's no ambiguity, and then there's no reason for me to be either preconditioned or biased. Preconditioned? That's like hair conditioner, I don't know. Predetermined. Speaking Dornish. So yeah, I'd just be stepping out for this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. So to whoever's presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. That's
it's
me.
Ross.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So hopefully members will have read the committee report for this one, and you will have noted that this application seeks part retrospective permission for the reconfiguration of the Pines site at the northern end of Frome. The site is located to the northwest of Commerce Park. Hopefully you can see in this aerial image, it's separated from Commerce Park by a hedgerow buffer, which is also sort of either side of Berkeley Lane, which has been closed to vehicular traffic at the Pines, essentially, so you can't get through and head further north than the site. This is an aerial photograph, gives a really good angle of the site following some of the operational development that's taken place at the site, particularly the landscaping works around this northern end of the site that started prior to the planning application being submitted. So you can see the area where the bund on the site has been removed and flattened, the open vacant area of the site at the moment. So this tilts back. We've got Berkeley Lane along the bottom of the image here, and this is the current site layout. The site developed over time from an original permission for 12 pitches, and it's grown to 23 with planning permission, expanded to the right-hand side of this site over time. And what you can see here is that each of the pitches contains a number of structures. So the usual expectation for a gypsy or traveller pitch is that you would have a static caravan, space for a touring caravan, space for parking, and an amenity or day building on the site as well. So you can see that on a number of these. There's the permanent amenity block. They straddle the boundary lines in a number of cases, a large static caravan, and then space for the other items that are more likely to move, the touring caravan and parking as well. And this is the proposed site layout. So this looks to add additional pitches substantially on the right-hand side to the north, where those bunds have been removed or reduced, and then at the western boundary or the corner, as we head towards the public right-of-way that runs along, on this image, the left-hand side of the site. During consideration of the application, the latest assessment of the need for new gypsy and traveller pitches has been received by the council. The report was produced by ORS as part of the evidence base for the emerging local plan. So in the committee report, I talked about how the provision at the site might be 1 year's worth of supply if we were to approve the additional 12 pitches, but this is a reassessment of that need. So it's separated here into need where the researchers were able to specifically identify that residents met the definition of a traveller as set out in the planning policy for traveller sites. So that's the total 136 pitches need. And then the other element of need, which makes up about 50% of the need, is a neutral confirmation that ORS couldn't determine whether or not those residents met with the definition or not. So they are included, but slightly separate. So it's neutral. There is a high likelihood that some of them will meet the definition, but they just couldn't confirm it. So overall, we have a substantial need for additional traveller sites. Some of that could be met through the local plan, but we don't have that new local plan in place as yet. So we need to do what we can to try and meet that need through granting permissions for additional pitches. So I set out again in the report that because we don't have a 5-year supply, we're, as we would be for bricks and mortar homes, we're in a tilted balance position. So we have to take that into account and give weight to the fact that we don't have that 5-year land supply in our decision-making process. So this slide shows a side-by-side comparison of the northern or the right-hand side of the site. We've got the existing and the proposed. And you can see the proposed site layout details the new elements of layout, including the introduction of additional pitches, the right-hand strip being entirely new, those 6 pitches down the side. And there's also additional circulation, a roadway running around the back. And then in the opposite top corner, you've got the comparison at that side of the site, the existing and the proposed, and you can see there's a pitch slotted in at the back here, and also this corner as well being reconfigured to fit an additional pitch in, which would impact on landscaping bunding on the site at the moment. So this is a plan for the day rooms where we have those additional pitches, and the pitches are butt up against each other neatly. So this is a double day room. Each pitch would benefit from half of this space. There's a kitchen and storage space, bathroom space, toilet space. So they provide minimum facilities to meet the needs of the occupants of the pitches. No details have been provided for the single unit buildings, or in a couple of instances they sort of nudge up against each other, don't fully align. So the only detail we have is this double unit. So you can see here how each of the new pitches would accommodate a static, a Tora, and then as an example here, hopefully you can see that's the double amenity or day room building would slot on site. You've got these double structures, but then as an example, you've got one here where it would be split out. And we don't, I mean, it's a small detail, but we don't have the detail of what that would look like on site or what the single day room down here would look like on site. Following publication of the officer's report, we received comments from the highways team raising concerns about the access to the site. Access to the site is via a road of variable width. The site, the road access at the moment serves the 23 pitches that are on site now. And we're proposing, or the applicant is proposing, sorry, to increase the number of pitches at the site from 23 to 35 without materially extending the overall size of the site. So the Highway Authority recommend refusal because there is insufficient information to demonstrate that particularly the substandard junction with Bath Road would be able to cope with the increase in the volume of traffic, large vehicles, towing vehicles using that junction. And just so you can see what we're talking about, we've got, this is Gypsy Lane, which then becomes Berkeley Lane. And this is the junction with Bath Road. I've managed to clip that off a little at the bottom, haven't I? So this is a tricky junction with Bath Road. There's also, so this road already serves a couple of dwellings that front directly onto Gypsy Lane. You've also got the access into the housing estate, the rugby club, and then the existing Pines Gypsy site at the top. And the access is clearly not brilliant, but in my view, there's nothing in the application that would significantly change the situation. And I recognise my highways colleagues disagree with me in terms of the significance of that one. So just before I remind you of the recommendation, I've got some photographs of the site. So in this one, I'm stood with my back to the open field, looking towards Commerce Park. You can see how the bunding has been reduced. At the end here, it's been chopped in half, scooped away. The site's been levelled, and there's some close boarded fencing that's been erected. So this is partway through the development proposal. This doesn't necessarily represent final scheme design, but hopefully it illustrates the scale and the width of the area that we're talking about and the relationships within and at the edges of the site, so between the site and the existing plots and pitches. So this is the area that would accommodate that straight row of 6 additional pitches. And then facing out from the site, you can see the close boarded fencing again, and hopefully you can see the height difference from the site, which sits above the surrounding fields. And then again here, you can see that this area of the site is higher than the core of the existing site. You can see also one of the amenity buildings in the background, and there's a remnant hedge feature coming into the site. So
In summary, balancing that need for additional sites for travellers across Somerset and the fact that the site already serves the traveller community with the specifics of the application that's in front of us, the recommendation before you is for refusal for the two reasons that are set out in the report and detailed here. So they relate essentially to the environment that would be created on site and the level of certainty that we've got around the details, the design details for what's proposed within the site itself. So officer recommendation is that permission be refused. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very comprehensive rounding up. Have we got any questions, comments? Over to you.
I think we've got that.
Yeah, well, not only is Dawn the local member, but Adam is too. So we'll go straight over to him.
Point of order.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, we have another speaker. This is my mistake. I do apologise. Emily Temple, online. I do apologise. Over to you, Ms. Temple.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Ms. Temple, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. Paragraph 3 of the committee report confirms all aspects of the proposal comply with the local plan, save for concerns relating to design, which I'll address today. In favour is the principle of development, redeveloping a site rather than establishing a new one. Paragraphs 34 to 37 highlight the substantial need for pitches, with a 1-year supply against a minimum requirement of 5 years. The tilted balance is engaged. Matters of location, sustainability, ecology, transport and landscape matters were assessed as acceptable. The public right-of-way is not affected and there's no flood risk. Turning to design, all but pitch 24 provide a day room for laundry and washing facilities. These aren't essential to provide because facilities are also included within caravans, and thus the absence from number 24 doesn't result in unsatisfactory living conditions. Pitch 24 also has space for a day room to be conditionally added. Paragraph 74 states caravans vary in size. This is positive because a single person or a couple do not need a family-sized caravan. It allows for a mix of caravans similar to how the council's housing mix policies work. Single day rooms are shown on the proposed plans for pitches 25 to 28 and 35, contrary to what is stated in the report, and plans could be provided. The impact on the landscape is appropriate as per paragraph 53. Extra caravans would be set visually against the existing character of a lawful caravan site, and the site limits do not change. The bund at 16 and 24 does not require removal as claimed in paragraph 87. Instead, the pitches are redesigned and the mobile homes moved 3 metres away from the boundary to accommodate planting. The applicant proposes a hard and soft landscape condition to introduce native planting. This is indicated on the proposed plan key as planted laurels, but could include a wider mix, and paragraph 49 states that conditional control for planting is appropriate. Sadly, the council's planning balance at paragraphs 94 and 95 is almost non-existent. No weighting has been given to anything other than need, nor other policy matters such as the social benefit of providing pitches, the environmental benefits from planting, or the economic benefits from increased local spending and working. The tilted balance is not referred to. In order for the design features to be so poor as to significantly and demonstrably outweigh all of the benefits, all the material planning considerations need to be weighted, and also a weight given to the design harm, which has not been written. From the responses I've provided, this doesn't appear to be examined. I therefore ask the councillors to undertake your own planning balance and grant planning permission, or defer the item to a future committee so that details can be assessed more fully and small plan updates or the new highway comments addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. I think we can finally then go on to the committee. And as I say, Adam is a local member. Do you want to kick us off?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I suppose a question for case officer is, does anything that the agent just said change anything in the report, anything of recommendations? And does the highways officer's comment change anything in the recommendations as well? Is there an extra reason for refusal there? Is there a need to defer this, or are you happy to present the same recommendations again? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I'm completely comfortable with the recommendation that we've made. It is for members to consider whether or not there's an additional reason for refusal in relation to highways. I think that one's, I think that's pretty balanced. I mean, I don't like it, but Emma and I had a robust conversation earlier about it. And if members felt that there was a transport or highways reason for refusal, I think that would be perfectly acceptable. I asked the applicant team for information in relation to the day rooms during the course of the consideration of the application. I asked for additional information relating to levels. I asked for additional information relating to landscaping and how they saw it being accommodated within the site, particularly with regard to the boundary treatment, so we could try and understand how you would get access to any kind of hedging feature if that was in its establishment phase, so that you can, secure the maintenance of that hedge, and whether you'd need a fence internally or externally to that to try and understand how that would work. And without understanding the depth of the plots that you would need to lose to accommodate that maintenance strip and the planting strip, I didn't feel like I had enough information to be able to confirm that the pitches as they were being proposed to us were big enough. So I agree that ordinarily some of these details would be able to be subject to a condition, but we felt that there was information missing to give us the certainty and the clarity that you would be able to achieve an acceptable landscaping treatment and enough space within the pitch for everything that is required to be accommodated within that pitch. I would gently accept that maybe the planning balance could have been articulated better, and that's something that you guys can think about, whether or not the social and economic benefits of the delivery of the pitches would outweigh the planning harms as they've been articulated and put to you. That is, in effect, what you're being asked to do today anyway. It is essentially that we think they're trying to put too many plots in the site. It's not, I started out thinking that I was going to recommend approval to you. I'm absolutely supportive of the principle of additional pitches for the travelling community. I think that making the best use of an existing site is a really positive thing to do. But I just don't think that we've got either the details or the specificity here, the specifics here, that would make it acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam, come back.
Yeah, I just think I read your report quite closely, and as well as that, the Berkeley Parish Council comments. I think there were several comments in their comments, and you refer to the reasons for refusal being to do with DP7 and DP8, and several times this mention of the need to need for a satisfactory living environment and a good standard of facilities and environmental health and public safety. And basically, I think what you're getting at is there's just too many plots. It's crammed in, and there's not enough space between the two. And I know there's been other issues on this site as well, but not to do with the planning system. I did raise in my initial response that intensifying the residential use of the site and its facilities could lead to overcrowding and overdevelopment of the site, which should be assessed, and you've assessed that. So that was a comment, it was a query. And my other comment, apart from the right of way, was this is a Gypsy and Traveller site for local Gypsy and Traveller families, a very important one. It's important that it's in a good state, and it should be required to remain so. So does this require to remain as a Gypsy and Traveller site? It's not going to be used for other people if this goes ahead, but I'm not suggesting it does.
If we were recommending approval today, we would be recommending the application of a condition that occupiers and residents needed to be from the relevant community. Whatever decision is made today, the permission, the previous permission, is extant. So that previous permission included the requirement that it should be occupied by members of the G&T community. That remains in place. So if you wanted to approve this expanded site, I would recommend that you put on a condition. If you want to refuse it, the existing condition still bites.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Cameron and then Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Chair. What I'm not especially clear on is the 6 metre rule between structures as per Gypsy Traveller sites. Could you confirm that the plan that's been submitted actually conforms to that, or is that the reason for your concern of overcrowding? Thank you.
So the rule that you're referring to relates to site licensing requirements. So this is about making sure that there's adequate separation between essentially potentially really combustible properties to make sure that you've got fire safety separation in the event that LPG causes issues on site or other potential flammable substances, properties. I haven't undertaken a detailed audit because it's covered by site licensing requirements, but it would be a requirement because all we're talking about in terms of buildings here is the amenity block, it's the day room. So the disposition of other things on site, other units, the static caravan on site where the tourer goes, that would essentially be covered by a residential site licence. So for it to be able to be site licensed, you would have to meet those 6 metre requirements. So either it has to be 6 metre separation or it has to have a higher level of fire retardance built in. So that's one of the classic areas where we try not to duplicate regimes. So where planning tries not to get on top of site licensing. So that would be addressed by environmental health colleagues who are currently, looking at the potential for this site and how it needs to be addressed, altered to meet those, make sure it continues to meet those standards.
Thank you. Is it a lead on from there?
Thank you, Chair. And maybe I'm just being slow and dull. So what you're saying is that the plans submitted should conform to the 6 metre ruling?
Yes, and they should, but I haven't measured every single structure because each plot, essentially, it's up to the person who rents or buys the plot to determine that the usable, the only fixed thing on the plot is the day room. You've got a day room, a touring caravan and a static caravan. So where you put the static caravan and the touring caravan in relation to where your neighbour puts their touring caravan and static caravan wouldn't be fixed by the planning permission because that's a use of the land. The stationing of a caravan is a use of the land. So it is for the individual plot pitch occupier to ensure that they are meeting the 6 metre requirement both within their own pitch and also in relation to their neighbouring pitch as part of the umbrella site licence requirements.
Are you happy with the answer? No, okay. Going on to Councillor Ashton.
Hello. Forgive my ignorance of these types of applications, but does a component of BNG apply to any of this? Because you're removing all the green site, it's just 100% filling it with caravan sites.
So there is an exemption or exception to BNG requirements in relation to retrospective development. So the removal of the bunds means that the proposal is at least partially retrospective, which means that they are exempt from biodiversity net gain.
Okay, I think Simon wants to come in a minute.
Yeah, members, just listening to the debate, I think there's a couple of important points that you need to note. The site licensing process, as Roz has said, is a totally separate process. It's carried out by Somerset Council, but it's carried out totally separate to the planning process. So, in a way, you should not rely on that as a material consideration for your decision making on the planning application. And then the other point is that the recommendation is not recommending approval, and Ros has tried to clarify effectively that the layout that's been submitted for various policy reasons is not considered acceptable, and effectively that's because of the numbers, the net increase in numbers that are proposed. So it's not, as she said, we're not taking away the benefit of the consent that applies for the site. That's there, and it's whether or not the additional uplift in plot numbers is acceptable. And as you can see from the recommendation, we're advising you that we don't think it is. We're not challenging the principle of an uplift, but the uplift as proposed is not considered to be acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Kay, do you still want to come in?
I haven't spoken yet, unbelievably, on this one. No. I'm just looking at the page 107 that the council's waste and recycling teams objected to proposed use of the site will not be accessed by appropriate sized vehicle, but the applicant has indicated that we could have a private waste management company employed to service the site. That could be controlled by conditions. So I'm just thinking if the committee is minded to approve this, can we make sure that's in? And I wondered if it could be extended to also looking after the lane, the approach up to this site, or if it would only deal with the rubbish that's generated on site, because we have a lot of fly tipping on that road. It's a Grampian, I don't know, it's a Grampian condition or something like that. But if we are going to refuse it, and also if we're going to approve it, could we actually have, in terms of landscaping, I think somebody commented that the chosen species wasn't very attractive. Could we actually have some native hedgerows and some sort of condition that I think Ros has suggested in the report somewhere, that instead of a close boarded fence, that it's some sort of wire fence so it can be maintained on either side. So that was if it's approved. If it's refused, I would actually want to add quite specifically, you've put in the refusal here, the site layout fails to protect the amenity of occupiers of all pitches within the site. Presumably that's the existing residents, and I have heard rumours that the existing residents aren't very happy with this, and they also feel that it's going to cram too many in there. And also I'd like to add in the objection from Highways. I know that Ros doesn't in her planning balance has not weighed that as being sufficient to be a reason for refusal, but I think that's quite a good reason for refusal, that the extra traffic on what's quite often a single track lane, and there may be touring caravans going in and out this lane, it's not a sufficient width to be able to manage all that extra traffic. And as was pointed out on that map, that road is also used by the rugby club, which has lots of social events on, as well as playing rugby, and also it services the Stonebridge estate. So I would add that. I'm not putting forward, I want to see if anybody else has got anything to say, but if they haven't, I could put forward that we refuse it and add those things in, but that might have to be an extra proposal which gets voted on first, I think. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything before I put that proposal forward.
Does anyone else want to say anything? Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just reiterate the point about housing need for this community and the harms outweighing the benefits, and how difficult that is, because we know in Somerset that this is a challenge, this is an issue in parts of Somerset, to make sure people have homes from this community, these communities, and it feels a shame that we haven't made this work. And it did seem, when we did get the response from the agent, that there was quite a strong pushback on the planning officer's decision. So I'm sort of uneasy about this, because this is a good thing to do, isn't it? And why haven't we made it work? I do appreciate the nuance that Ros did say. It has to be the right planning application, even though in the spirit of what is
wanted to be achieved is a good thing. And you still have to implement policies. But I find this a really hard one to be turning down. It's just my view on it. I want to support it.
Thank you very much. Adam, do you want to come back in?
I think Steve might have to.
Okay, Steve.
Just to follow on Councillor Slow's remarks, I mean, a refusal here is not necessarily a refusal to say a reapplication on a slightly less dense site. Yeah. So we can express support for it, but we can refuse it based on the officer's recommendations, which seems to be a reasonable path to follow.
Is that a proposal?
Yes.
Okay, I think, Simon, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, just to members, you've obviously talked about the highways reason for refusal, and Councillor Kay has made a suggestion that she's supportive of it. Obviously, you will have to vote as a committee as to whether or not you agree with that concern. But be mindful, if you do agree with that concern, you probably would be stifling development. Again, I think it would be unreasonable because you're concerned about the use of that part of the highway network for HGV style vehicles. Well, there are ways of managing trips that involve larger vehicles along a section of the highway so that can be done safely if, for instance, the size of the vehicle using the highway might take up the whole of the carriageway. So again, just in terms of your thoughts about accepting the principle, be mindful of adding that reason for refusal.
Okay, can we hear from Councillor Demery and then we'll come back to you, please?
Yeah, there's due to be a proposal for housing adjacent to this site, about 300 houses, I think, which would involve, if I'm right, actually reconfiguring Gypsy Lane so that the entrance to it was further down the hill, further away from Broome. Does that come into consideration? It doesn't. I'm just wondering, I thought if that entrance to the site was changed, that might strengthen the application.
Well, I think we've got to look at the application as it is rather than what might be coming. So, Councillor Kay. Oh, before you come in, Helen, can we go over to...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of summarise several aspects that have been discussed on highways terms, if you like. The lane itself, yes, there is a proposal in for a larger scheme that will realign the junction of Gypsy Lane and the B-class road. That one there, at the very corner of the screen there, thank you, Ros. It will take it further north, well, northwest-ish, and from everything that I've seen so far, will be a better junction. However, the rest of the route to the Pines residential site will continue along the same route as is currently. And it's not just the junction that is the problem. The vast majority of the route is single track. There are no passing places if you've got a large vehicle trying to go one way or the other. So there is nowhere to pass.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to Helen then.
Okay, thank you. So I understand what we're saying about the number of pitches, what Simon said and what Councillor Ashton said. At the moment, I think the principle of expanding this site is a good one. It's just trying to squeeze 12 plots on where there's currently only 2, and then there was a surrounding bit of green space, and we're now trying to squeeze 12 extra plots on there. You know, if the applicant, she's online, I hope still, came back and maybe was suggesting a smaller number, like another 6 or 8, then that might be something we could look at again. I don't know if that would still affect the amenity of the local residents, and that would have to be then decided on its own merits, I guess. It also would mean that there'd be less extra traffic on this road. And I think we've got to look at the application that's in front of us, which is for 12 extra plots. And I do think that's going to have an effect on the roadway. And so I would like to propose, separate from the main motion, I'd like to propose an extra reason for refusal, which is that it's going to have it's insufficient access road. I'm not quite sure what the wording would be, and I don't know if Emma could help me with that. The access road is not sufficient for an extra 12 vehicles. Is it on there?
I think my manager may well have done that. He provided these comments last week. I was on leave. But he has provided these comments, and the last paragraph there says Gypsy Lane, by reason of its restricted width, poor alignment and substandard junction with Bath Road, is considered unsuitable to serve as a means of access to the proposed development. The proposal is therefore contrary to section 9 of the planning, the MPPF and policy DP9 of the Mendip District Local Plan.
So I'd like to put forward a motion just for that for the moment, to add that as an extra reason for refusal. So I think that has to be taken before the main motion.
Okay.
I need a second.
I have to ask the officers here, can we have that as a separate condition? And if we can, do we need to vote on it first?
A separate reason.
Just so effectively, Councillor Kay, are you recommending that the officer recommendation for refusal is agreed, subject to the inclusion of that reason? Because you would, as a committee, then vote first on that reason, but you have voted. You have a motion. You've got to accept the officer recommendation for refusal.
Yes,
first.
OK, I'll make that clearer. I would like to accept the officer recommendation for refusal based on the main reasons that she has given here, virtue of increased density of occupation, and it fails to protect the amenity of the current occupiers and future occupiers within the site, and provide a satisfactory environment for current and future occupants. As such, the proposal is contrary to policies DP7, DP8, blah, blah, blah. And I'd like to add the wording that Emma suggested. So I think we've now got to vote first on that wording. Sorry, it's not Emma, John Fellingham, I think, wrote that report. So we're not going to vote on that first, and I need a seconder to add that as an extra condition, which I think is coming from Adam. Yeah.
Can I just speak? Is that necessary to actually, this has become confused over the last few meetings. We never used to actually have to get an additional.
Because you're putting forward the proposal with an additional reason, not condition, on it. So members are clear what they're voting for, and if they're happy with that, then they would vote with you on that or against you on that.
Okay, there's some members that may wish to vote for it as it stands and not have that extra condition, that extra reason for refusal. That's the only reason I was separating, but I'm happy to go the way you suggest.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know planning law like most people and many people in the room, but I think if Steve Ashton wants to incorporate that into his proposal, we can move on it, can't we?
Yes, we can. Yeah. Councillor Sully, did you want to come back in?
I would like to potentially put on the table deferring this, and whether there can be further work done on it regarding the numbers. I want to try. I might be shot down with a machine gun from the planning team, but I would like to propose that. Emma, we'll be talking about single track lanes, West Bradley. We'll be talking about that in the future, because I've never heard that come up. I'm just worried about us making this decision about the highways when there's already a disagreement within the team, and I just think it's just so important that we get this right, and that's why I'd rather we defer to iron out the highways conflict, which I know is gentle with our planning team, but I just think it feels a bit of a loose end.
Thank you very much, but can we go over to the legal advice?
We've got a motion on the table.
We have a motion, yes.
So we have to take that motion before anything else.
Which I have by implication seconded.
Well, okay. So Steve, you're happy with your original proposal with the addition of the highways? Yes. And that is going to be...
My only concern is I wouldn't want by using that as a reason, I just want a little bit of clarification here, by using the highways reason here, we wouldn't preclude any further application or stymie any further application on this site because we're explicitly saying that's a reason why we're refusing now.
How do you know?
No, but I'm saying that.
Okay, yeah, can we hear the answer from the officer,
by
please?
including this, we are effectively stymieing further applications. But if we refuse based on the original proposal here, we're not. We can then send a message to say that you can come back later with a slightly modified application or reduced application, which may not have such a strong objection. So if we just simply accept, rather than complicating it with the highways matter at the moment.
So in my view, there's two things on these highways comments. One is we haven't been given any information to demonstrate one way or the other that the access is satisfactory. So there is an opportunity for the applicant team to overcome that reason for refusal. And I'm not sure how you could for a scheme of this size. So if they could demonstrate the infrequency of the trips by the large vehicles, you might say on balance, actually, one a week, it might be okay. You know, so we just don't have that information at the moment. So that's what the first bit of this text that's on screen now talks about. The text that we would use as our reason, which is the last paragraph, talks about Gypsy Lane being considered unsuitable to serve as a means of access to the proposed development. So that's for this scheme, Gypsy Lane is unacceptable. Highways, if a new application comes in, will look again. And if it's a new application with really clear information about the volume, the size, the frequency of trips, then they might be able to come to a different conclusion, you know, if it was a different scheme that was being presented to them.
Are you happy with that, Steve? Yeah, okay, so your proposal still stands with the highways included? Yes.
I'm sorry. I think that the highways comment, I think, is unnecessary. I don't want to start, from Councillor Starley's point of view, I don't want to stymie or any future application on a smaller scale by actually putting weight on the highways argument at the moment.
I'm happy to withdraw it, Steve. Let's withdraw that.
Let's withdraw that and just...
Okay,
otherwise
so the proposal is to accept the officer's recommendation to refusal as is. As is. Okay. We have a proposal and a seconder. Can we go to a vote?
Can we...
And against? One. Abstain? Thank you. The application is refused.
Chair, please maybe have another little break.
Another little break?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're rattling through quite nicely. So, yes, another 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, are we all back?
It's all gone.
I think Councillor Denton and Councillor Hendry have left. They've had to dive on. So if we note that, we are going on to our agenda item number 8. Number 8. It is Land at Titherington View, Titherington. And that is going to be introduced by Colton, I believe.
It is going to be introduced by Carlton, but I'm just going to come in a second. I just wanted to sort of remind or say to members that I've been made aware that you, I believe, have had some documents sent to you maybe over the weekend on this application from Selwood Parish Council. You may or may not have. If any of you have received them, please disregard what you have seen because they came in outside of the required time period before the committee meeting. And if there's anybody that's going to speak on the matter, then you shouldn't make reference specifically to those documents if there's anyone from the parish council going to speak. So thank you. Now to Carl.
Thank you both. Right, this application, you'll remember, came to the committee some time ago. I don't think it did, actually. No, it got Delhi refusal, but it was submitted as an outline application, and the planning inspector said because it was retrospective nature, we shouldn't have accepted the outline application, and we should have asked for it to be a full application. So we've never really had a final decision on this site. Okay, so the site is along Bull Corrie Road in Tytherington, and it's a change of use comprising traveller accommodation consisting of static caravan with ancillary outbuildings to include amenity building, storage unit, kennels, stables. It's part retrospective, and the applicant also proposing a more thorough scheme in relation to being able to live there on a permanent basis. So if we have a look at, this is the application site. It's part of a wider historic park and garden belonging to Marston House, which is far off to the west. So being part retrospective, the site was cleared of trees and static caravans and stables and kennels, etc., and some shed buildings erected on the site. So this is what's on the site at the moment, give or take, and the access arrangement is here. So essentially, this is what initially came in with the application as a proposal. So a lot of the existing building structures stay, but then you have a mobile home and a touring caravan site, etc. So a slightly more intense layout. So I'll run you through some of the buildings that will be on the site. So these are existing cabin on the site. Sorry, there's the existing cabin on the site. This is a diagram of a static caravan, which is being proposed to go on the site. There's another ancillary building, utility block, which are quite common with gypsy and traveller sites, that you have a separate utility block where people can gather, shower, that sort of thing, and a little kitchen, etc. Yeah, so there's an arrangement of a stables and kennels on the site already. Right. So the existing access, as I've already said, is this part here, and there's restricted visibility to the left. So the applicant has suggested that in order to gain suitable visibility, they'll move the access down here, and that will be stopped up. Existing access be stopped up, and this will be the new access arrangement. So this should be acceptable in terms of visibility in both directions, and now has the general support of the Highway Authority. As part of the application in terms of BNG and the loss of the trees that were cleared to make way for the site, the applicant has proposed on land outside of their control at the moment, area of significant tree planting, quite considerably more than the site would accommodate. So it's all that sort of brown area there. There will also be hedgerow planting, increased hedgerow planting to increase the biodiversity gains of the site as well. The only problem is, at the moment, we don't have any sort of signed legal agreement from the landowner that will actually come into fruition. So some general photographs of the site. as is at the moment. You see all the trees are removed and it's laid to a general hard standing gravel with some tarmac parts at the access. This represents the land at the rear, which I just showed you, some of the land where the additional replacement planting would take place. More of the site here. Yeah, and this is the roadside along Bulls Quarries Road. So the applicant has put a close border fence up. The new access would go in about here, and the applicant has in front of that head planted a non-standard stock hedgerow. I think it's a laurel planting along the front to disguise the panel fence that lies behind it. I think that would have to change slightly in order to and be thinned back in order to create the necessary visibility displays as set out in the traffic impact assessment. So this is a general overview of before. You could see the whole area of woodland here, which is part of the historic park and garden, and then it was cleared to make way for the current site. So you'll see from my recommendations that the local planning authority are recommending refusal for three reasons, but predominantly in summary, we consider that while we support in principle the need for additional gypsy and traveller sites, that the loss of this historic woodland, in terms of historic, I mean in terms of it being attached to a historic park and garden, has a significant impact on the character appearance of the area and the impact on the status of the historic park and garden and other listed buildings, as you see in the report. And the benefits of bringing forward the site don't outweigh these harms, and we consider these to be strong reason for refusal, and hence the recommendation to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got a number of objectors who have written in and asked us to read out, so I shall be sharing that with Adam. And we're going to start with the Forestry Commission. Right, the Forestry Commission is a forestry regulator in England and the government department responsible for protecting, expanding and promoting the sustainable management of woodlands. We are the enforcing body for activities governed by the Forestry Act 1967 and the Environmental Impact Assessment Forestry England and Wales Regulations 1999. In response to this public consultation, we are providing the Council with information about the presence of legal obligations relating to the land within the above referenced planning application. As a non-ministerial government department, the Forestry Commission provides no opinion either supporting or objecting to the application. The below simply sets out the Forestry Commission's position in relation to conditional felling licences, restocking and or enforcement notices made under the Forestry Act 1967. We would like to draw the Council's attention that there were trees growing on the land pertinent to this application. Our records show there was no felling licence in place for the removal of these trees. Local planning authorities may also wish to consider land subject to a notice or felled under licence to be woodland or existing trees, as the presence of the notice or licence ensures the land will be restocked with trees and maintained for a period of 10 years from the date of the trees being planted. This is particularly pertinent in relation to ancient woodland sites and the application of the National Planning Policy framework in relation to these sites, as well as biodiversity net gain. The land subject to this application was subject to an alleged illegal felling and was subsequently served notice of the following notices. One issued 11th of June 2020 requiring the land to be restocked with 110 trees as prescribed. The notice also detailed the requirement of the trees to be maintained for a period of 10 years. and one issued July 2022 requiring the land to be restocked with 110 trees as described as before, to be maintained for a period of 10 years. Both notices were shared at the relevant time with Mendip. To date, the land remains unplanted. Throughout the period, there appears to have been a change in land ownership, and the LOs have not discussed directly with the FC any alternative area of planting to mitigate the felling of living trees. We hope these comments are helpful. Thank you very much, Forestry Commission. And then we go on to an objective by resident, Misha Culpepper. It's going to be read out by Adam.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? The comments are, I drive past the application address on my way to work and noticed a planning notice on the gate. I don't understand why it's dated 2025, but either way, it matters to me to raise my objection. I equally don't know why a second application can be made when the first one, many years ago, was rejected. I witnessed the destruction of the mature trees and the habitat at the time and find it awful that nothing seems to have been done. A big fence has been erected, 2 gateways built and the land tarmacked at the entrance, even though it's my understanding they already had planning application rejected. Driving past there, I've seen a number of near-miss accidents as the vehicles pull out onto a fast country road on a blind bend. They aren't always cars, bigger vehicles too. It is a rat run and sometimes articulated are on that road. They shouldn't be as it's too narrow, but it adds to the danger. My concern if this application is accepted is that having already flouted the law, be it occupying the location, building on the plot after a rejection, as well as a devastated woodland, that it means this kind of thing is acceptable. Anyone can buy a piece of woodland and do the same as this sets precedent. I worry about our Frome green and tree spaces. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I have an objection from a chap called Jim Dowling, representing some of the Titherington residents. This is a collective view of numerous residents of Titherington. Households have submitted their concerns anonymously as they live in fear of retribution, but have all strongly objected to the planning application. The officer's report is incorrect in respect to there being little or no impact on the community. As he states in 2.1 and so 2.2 is incorrect. Not according with DP7 would be considered a refusal reason by Titherington residents objecting. In number 8, personal circumstances, the LPA have failed to liaise with Selwood Parish Councils on some very serious issues, including mental health aspects affecting the settled community, and their comments have previously been included on their portal but have not been uploaded this time. In summary, the Titherington residents have given the following reasons for not according with DP7. The original planning application was refused. The original planning application was ignored. Development occurred with total disregard for the nature of the site, the biodiversity and wildlife. Buildings have been erected. There are several caravans and work vehicles. There is bright lighting plus kennels and stables. The destroyed woodland was a thriving habitat for birds, bats and other wildlife. The landscape roadside is now an ugly fenced and Leylandii head with a tarmac and hardcore driveway into the site. High Court injunctions have been ignored. How is it possible that the breaches of the High Court injunction have been allowed to occur without penalty? If this precedent is set with regard to Titherington's copse, anyone will be able to purchase forested land, tear down trees, destroy the natural landscape and build with no regard to proper process or local communities. The current occupiers have blatantly removed mature TPO trees and have ignored orders to replant. How can their commitment to replant trees be deemed creditable? Proposing to plant on neighbouring land to offset loss is surely not the point or legal. It is not in itself an admission of wrongdoing in the first place. The current site has no formal drainage system and is harming the environment. It is very clear they are discharging into Marston Brook. Highway access is not safe. The entry illegally installed is on a blind bend on a 60-mile-per-hour road without the required compliant lines of sight. Residents have observed and photographed the applicants racing their pony and trap on Bulls Quarries Road, with the applicant standing in the road to slow down traffic. There is a continued noise pollution from the barking and whining of dogs and horses. There is suggestion of puppy farming. A resident was asked for directions to it. It is very clear that the residents have been continuously living there for 5 years now. We observe regular council waste collections from the bins outside their gate. Our understanding is that the Forestry Commission have served enforcement restocking notices. The fact that the Forestry Commission are prepared to take action reflects the professional body's consideration of illegal felling and destruction of woodland. And as a community, we now live in fear. There has been an armed police raid at the site and threats made to residents. As a result of these matters, we politely request the local planning authority refuse this application. That is from a resident of Tytherington. And now we have a supporter, neighbouring landowner Jessica Williams. Please, can you come forward, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Testing.
Thank you.
Hi. Great afternoon. My name is Jessica Williams, and I live in the property directly adjacent to Tammy Barney and her beautiful family. The previous comments by other Tytherington residents read out here are not representative of the village, but a very small few. I'm here to submit my wholehearted support for this planning application. I've lived next door to this family for around the last 4 years, having lived in my home for the last 7 years. Living next to them has been the most incredible experience. Meeting Tammy, Joby, Joby who's her partner, and their children Lacey Marie and Shui, you feel immediately part of their family. And since the moment they moved in, I've been blown away by the respect, care, and decency I've been blessed to experience, more so than any other neighbour I've had in my life. This includes, but is not limited to, as I only have 3 minutes, them offering to pressure wash our driveway when they saw it was needed, blowing the leaves off, offering to check in on the house and surroundings while we're away, retarmacking at no charge, a symbol that had been scraped into our driveway by vandals, clearing rubbish that had been fly-tipped around the local community, offering to support with our roof that is Joby's profession, always showing Christmas presents, basically there for anything we need anytime. They know we equally reciprocate and will always support however they need, which is why I'm here today. On basic points, which is not a concern for me, but I feel to share here for the record, they are a quiet family of 4, they are super clean, and I do not experience noise disruption at all. This is a family who belong to a community who's been vilified, and the racism they experience is disgusting to observe and hear about. That members of that community and their friends have had their property set on fire, been robbed, abused, attacked, pets stolen, all from people not part of that community because they choose to live in a different way. Even from what I understand, the request for them to plant over 10 times the amount of trees on the property that were cut down on land they purchased seems prohibitive for a family who have found a home they consider safe. I personally cannot imagine feeling unsafe for one night or 1 week, let alone every single night, and then buying land to have stability to be told I couldn't use it. On the topic of the plants that were cut down, and that has been stated that the previous habitat was undetermined, my bedroom looks out over the land where the plants were for the space for their home, so I've looked at it every single day for almost 7 years. Walked past it every single day, not driven past it on my way to work. It was at most the same density of forestry as the adjacent woodland. I would have said substantially less, it is nearer to the road and you could easily see through it, but absolutely not more. And there is zero visual concerns with the land too. It is fenced with a beautiful hedge. The only party who can see into the property aside from the entrance gate, which is adjacent to my own property, and we have mirrors to prevent any issues happening there. I'm the only one who can see it from above, from my room. And I have no concerns. I would also be willing to provide a statement on the previous tree density also. All this considered, this remains less of a concern than fellow members of the local community's security, health and well-being, as we would all wish that others considered on our behalf if we were in the same situation. We talk about sustainability. Why? To protect our families and community and the future of our community because of the society we want to live in the future. I'm almost done. Living next to Joby and Tammy is a society I want to live in. I agree with Councillor Sully's sentiment previously that what we are here about is about people, and giving people the opportunity who may have lived differently before the chance to have a stable and safe home is something that I thought we'd evolved to as a country a long time ago. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much indeed. Very good. And now we go on to the representation from the Parish Council, which is going to be read out by Adam.
Lovely, thank you. Selwood Parish Council supports the officer's decision to refuse this application. When this officer first refused planning on this site in 2023, it was refused for 9 reasons, and one of which conflated 5 reasons into 1 point. So in all, 13 reasons were given for the refusal. These all still stand, and many reasons have become more serious as the applicant has continued to develop the site since 2023. The High Court judge has recommended only a month is given for a refusal to be appealed, and if the appeal is lost, then the woodland must be reinstated as per the court's final injunction order. A national precedent is at stake here today. Your decision today will decide if it is okay to buy woodland, destroy all the trees, develop without consent and get away with it. A refusal is in the public interest, so Selwood Parish Council urge you to be consistent with the officer's previous refusal by including the previous reasons that are now missing to make this refusal comprehensive. Access. It should have been a safe access originally or remediated accordingly during the last 3 years. Neither has occurred. A busy entrance next to puppy kennels and horses is proposed. We doubt this will be delivered if conditioned. Trees. The replacement BNG offered is on land she does not own. She has not evidenced this significant financial resources to plant 1,256 trees and 366 shrubs. In any case, the Forestry Commission restocking notice is site-specific. We welcome the previous tree officer's 6-page objection, which should stand. Ecology. Felling a mature woodland in an area that is part of the Mells Bat SAC is very damaging. Surface water runoff. This has increased with no approved mitigation for 3 years. Foul drainage. The applicant wants to connect to mains foul drainage. There is no mains foul drain in Titherington. Climate. No energy, conservation nor efficiency proposals. Please also note, the applicant was not transient in her lifestyle nor work and left settled accommodation with her family to unlawfully occupy the site. The harm done to bat roosts and habitat will never be known. The Forestry Commission's restocking enforcement notice, TPOs from this planning authority since early 2020 and planning refusal in 2023 have all been ignored. By continuing to develop, the applicant has breached the July 2022 High Court order and when faced with the matter returning to the High Court submitted another application. The Forestry Commission requires 110 trees to be replanted on this site, and while we urge this planning committee to support them with a second strong refusal, we also hope that Somerset's climate emergency pledges and the High Court injunctions this LPA has won at considerable effort and expense mean that personal financial gain is not to be rewarded in respect of this wholly unnecessary environmental crime affecting the trees and the community. In the public interest, please refuse this application in the fullest, most detailed terms. Thank you. That is the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we have a Councillor Michael Dunk, who's online, or I don't think he's a local councillor, but is Michael online?
Yes, I am a local councillor. I'm representing Frome West, and yeah, I would like to speak on this. It's something, well, I hope you can bear with me. I hope I'm not over 3 minutes, but I'll do my best to stay within. Okay, shall I start now?
Fire away, Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. I find myself in the unusual position of agreeing with the officer recommendation to refuse. I followed this disaster since 2020, when about 110 trees were felled illegally. I mean, the history of this is all in the officer's report, but it does demonstrate to me that I should not expect compliance from those associated with this site. That's the history we've got, non-compliance. I would therefore caution the committee about relying on allowing conditions that need to be complied with. I noticed that the previous application in 2023 did result in 9 reasons for refusal, and this time the officer has only listed 3. And because this application is part retrospective, I would expect to be deciding whether what has already been done on the site is satisfactory. For instance, the access entrance and the provision for foul water have already been completed and installed. Both were thought non-compliant in 2023, but are now the subject of conditions which require fairly expensive works to take place. I would rather they were formed part of the reasons to refuse, as there should be no expectation that the conditions will be complied with. It's not a safe assumption, shall we say. In any event, the site should not be inhabited until both works are completed. The septic tank presently installed drains into the Marston Brook, and the current entrance is deemed unsafe by highways and a hazard to highways and public safety. In the officer's report, I note at 12.1, and we've already had comment about this, that the residents of Selwood Parish Council aren't particularly adversely affected. I think the comments that were read out say the opposite, really. They have been affected and only feel able to do so to comment anonymously now in fear of reprisals. I would also note that there is no mention now, I don't think, in the officer's report of the street scene changing. This is a village where it's important that the street scene is maintained, and the lot of these trees and the introduction of a fence with laurel is not in keeping. The officer's report at point 15, he mentions ecology. I think the problem with this is the damage is done to the Mills Valley SAC, and expecting mitigation, I don't think there's any present likelihood of the Section 106 agreement being able to secure that at the moment. So that has to be a refusal based on ecology in that case. I mean, it's one thing to buy a pony paddock and turn it into a traveller's site with retrospective permission, but this is a mature woodland that forms part of a Grade 2 listed parkland and garden, and which is also part of the setting of listed heritage assets. The Forestry Commission want it replanted.
Michael, can you wrap it up, please?
I am going to, believe me.
Thank you very much.
The Forestry Commission want it to be replanted, and if this application is refused, then we have a chance of achieving that. Assuming the application is refused today, I think we may expect an appeal, and I suggest that the committee get confirmation that any appeal must be submitted within 1 month, as directed by the High Court judge. I would also ask legal officers to inform us what we may expect to happen if there is no appeal and if the appeal is refused. I don't think we want to send out a signal that it's okay to buy woodland, fell all the trees and then live on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. You made your point. And now we move on, please, to the applicant, who is Tammy Ayres. Do you wish to speak? Thank you.
I have come here today to speak, even though I'm not used to public speaking. I wanted to show the real person behind this application, a mum of 2 and a wife. I'm just trying to provide a safe and happy place for my family. In my family, there is my son who is 18, my daughter who is 13, and me and my husband. My family is a very respectful family who never causes any problems and respects other people's and their privacy. We are not the typical stereotype to which people imagine. When we first came on the land, we had certain neighbours that expressed this to us in a very rude way and made it very clear of what they thought to them, where we were no better than dirt. But after time went on, they realised the true us. We now are friends. The lady actually brings me groceries that she has grown, and we have good old chats. We actually make sure she is okay and look out for her if she has any problems, as she is an aged lady. We also have made lots of friends in the community and help out and support where we can. For example, we use the Lighthouse Swimming, the CAF, the milk station, and we are also friendly with the owner of the shop at the end of the road. My husband has actually dealt on his own with fly tipping and the rubbish that has been tipped in the community. He's cleared and taken away on more than one occasion. He will also help the locals alongside my son with any outside work that needs doing and generally keeps everything neat and tidy. My husband suffers with mental health, so this keeps his mind going and gives him a focus. My daughter has ADHD and autism. She likes to have her routines that helps her out around the land. For example, she likes to grow plants, fruit and veg. She looks after her horses and her other animals, and she doesn't like to be disrupted. And this is important for her. She needs the space and the quiet time, otherwise this affects her and the whole family. Otherwise she has meltdowns. We moved onto the site as we had to leave our previous communal site as it wasn't safe for us anymore. The behaviour of the other residents was making my husband ill and my children anxious. They didn't want to go to school, even leave the caravan. We are a very private little family, who myself comes from a little family and lives away from any big communities. We just focus on what we need to do and that's it. My husband cannot read or write and I struggle. We did not know about the Forestry Commission rules. We thought we asked the right questions about the trees based on the advice we was given. The site was cleared so we could move our children to safety. We would not have felled the trees if we had known that we were not supposed to without a felon licence. We truly didn't understand, and for this we are very, very sorry. We have done everything in our power to move forward positively. We are good neighbours and a little family who just wants to make a safe and quiet home for our kids, who can live peacefully knowing that we're safe and settled. And this means much more than a piece of land. It's the world to us and more. Please, can you take this into consideration? In the last 4 years, my husband's mental health has improved and my children are happy and settled. But this process is taking its toll. The worry of us losing our home and nowhere else to go is extremely hard, especially on my daughter. Her anxiety has now taken a turn. The fear of nowhere to go is unimaginable. So please, can we just ask for a chance so we can make a home? We're just one little family, not what everyone thinks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very nice. I think that's the end of the speakers. It's over to the committee, and I think we're going to start with Councillor Sully.
Okay, I've never made it a secret that planning, I think, is one of the most challenging things we have to do as councillors. How serious the decisions are on people's lives and the impacts. And I genuinely look at the application in front of me. I'm sort of aware of stuff going on, swirling around my head, but I don't really know, and that's all discounted. I do appreciate the views of and of all the speakers spoken, but I find it hard to take this might happen because that happened. So because non-compliance was done in the past, that means the future, you know, I can't take that as a way of making me make my decisions. And I think we all have to be like that. We can't assume that that if permission is given, that everything won't be complied with. The other point I want to make, the irony of this is that we have the applicant here who has engaged with the process, and as some of us know in our divisions, we don't have that. we don't have that engagement. We have people putting their homes in places, and then there's this challenge with enforcement, whether enforcement happens or not. So I find this particularly difficult. I'm not close to all the we don't know what to describe it, what some people may know, people that are in the community that have perceptions and they have realities. I am here as someone on this committee looking at a planning application with and listening to the applicant who has engaged with it and has given their side. And I am not immune to empathy for that, and that people need homes. But I'm not going to make an assumption that if planning permission was given, that the applicant would then forfeit all the agreements just because that was done in the past. We can't think like that, can we? We'd be condemning everybody. And it has come up, it does come up sometimes in our planning sessions where people make assumptions of what they think might happen, but we can't do that, can we? So I want to put that over to the officers about how we deal with that. How do it's Carlton, you know, or Simon, how do we deal with that? That we are put in this position where we're being drawn down a trajectory of motivation of an applicant, and I really respect some of the submitted comment. I really respect it, but they were making comments about the character of the people. We can't take that. We can't take that. We can't be clouded by that. So I just wondered, Simon, if you could comment on my view.
Could that one hanging just for a minute. I just noticed that the local councillor is Councillor Kay, and I should have come to you first. I do apologise. Can we go to you now? We will.
Okay, thank you. So I also have some questions. I mean, which is following on from that. When we did our training at Mendit, we were told that we were not supposed to take that much concern of individual circumstances. I mean, I know it's been included in Carlton's report, and he says that is something you take into consideration, but you have to do the balance. But I seem to remember that we're not supposed to take account of personal circumstances. I'm pleased to see the applicant is here. I'm also disappointed that all those people that put in those comments are not here, but they are saying that they feel fearful. And I think we have to respect their feelings as well as the applicant's feelings as well. So there is a sort of fear. My concern also here is that this is a long, thin site, and as you go down Bulls Quarry Road, it's on the right-hand side, and you can actually there is some softening now of the fence. But if you go a bit further down, there's another site to the south where they've not cleared so many trees. Now, I heard on this first site that we're talking about today that a large redwood tree had been taken down and some ancient trees. So there seems to be a conflict, a different interpretation of how old the trees were that have been taken down. So that is a bit of a concern that I keep hearing the word ancient woodland that's been chopped down, and I assume that it is correct. If you go further down, you can see that there's a gate and a close boarded fence which has not yet been disguised in any way, and there is some very mature trees in that site. And I am concerned about this precedent thing, and I just want to explore that a little bit, which is that there is this idea that if we give permission today, that people may come and be able to take any woodland and chop it down and live there and do what they like with it. And I am concerned about setting that precedent, but somebody else has pointed out to me that it may be setting a precedent nationally. So I'm concerned locally that the plot next door may be the next to go and all the trees be chopped down there. But I'm also concerned, I also wanted to know if nationally this might set a precedent. So that's my first question. There are some other things, which is that if people are prepared to give the approval today, which is that, I am concerned about this lack of enforceable mitigation plan, and also where does the Forestry Commission stand in all this? It sounds to me like, we've got to plant 110 trees on land that's not owned by the applicant. There's no legal agreement. So I am concerned. There's a lot of what ifs here. And it just feels to me like there's too many things standing against it, what people have said about all the other aspects of it. I can't remember what they all are now. There's so many. Impact on the street scene, impact on the heritage assets, impact. You say that in Carlton, in your paper, there's only 2 properties nearby, but there is a whole village that's got a particular kind of cutesy look about it. It's all kind of in an old stone, quite dark. And this does actually impact on the general character of the village as well, I would argue. Yeah, I mean, access and also drainage. Carlton did originally in his first time he refused this, he mentioned drainage. I always go on about drainage. I am concerned about foul drainage going into Marston Brook. So that is another reason. I think if we were to refuse it, I might ask if the committee if they would add the reason of drainage. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Simon, if we go over to you, can you explain where this is partly looking back?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try my best, Chairman, for the members. I mean, Councillor Sully and Councillor Kay have made quite different comments. I think you've heard a lot in the room today from a number of speakers. I would urge you to focus your assessment of the application on the advice that Carlton has set out, because Carlton has set out the points that are salient to the planning assessment of the application. The report sets out the history, and again, you've heard a lot in speaking by various people as to what has happened, so I don't want to review or go over that again, because, you know, again, just flipping to some of Councillor Kay's comments, your decision on this application won't set a precedent nationally or locally, because each planning application is assessed on its merits. So again, if that gives you some reassurance, I hope it does. In terms of what has happened with regards to the unauthorised works at the site, the council is in the process of seeking to enforce formal notices, a stop notice and not so much a stop notice, an enforcement notice that was served back in 2021, which related to both the site, which is the subject of the application, and because Councillor Kay's asked, I'll just clarify for you as a group that it also referred to the site due south. We've actually referenced that in the report. So again, hopefully you've picked that up by looking at the report. And the terms of the enforcement notice that the council had served and have partly secured injunctive action against relate to both this application site and the site to the south. And in terms of how it affects the site to the south, the High Court has now accepted the council's position that the terms of the enforcement notice can now be injuncted against with regards to the southern site. The last stage in that process is for the council to serve the terms of the injunction on the landowner. So let's set that aside because it's not relevant at all to what you're considering with this application. Again, you've heard about the 9 reasons on the previous application, and you've heard that the council had previously refused an application. That's correct. Again, it's set out in the report pack. The application was submitted in 2022 as an outline application, which again was the issue, because although the council refused it, when it was progressed to the appeal process, central government through PINS would not consider it because of the fact that as it was a solely retrospective application, you cannot seek permission respectively through the outline method. So effectively, that process has been set aside, and as part of the legal process, the council went back to seek the advice of the courts, and the court said, well, the planning merits of the unauthorised use have still not been tested, so let's provide the applicant with the opportunity to test it with another planning application, which is what we've got. A timescale was provided for them to submit that application, which they provided, which they complied with. This is the application. Carlton has assessed it in conjunction with all the statutory consultees that you would expect him to consult on. And as a result of that, and considering the personal circumstances of the applicant and taking into account the public sector equality requirement, notwithstanding the shortfall, notwithstanding the personal circumstances, the harms that have been identified through assessing the application are considered a strong enough reason for refusal. So that's why we're recommending refusal for you to consider, and that's principally set out in the first reason for refusal on page 129 of your report pack. You've heard a lot from public speakers about the 9 reasons for refusal and why are they not being followed through. And the simple reason is that, as you can see from the consultee responses, a lot of the consultees have not raised objections. So therefore, as part of our recommendation, we don't want to put forward reasons for refusal which we couldn't justify at an appeal process, because if they're capable of being addressed through a condition, if we were going to recommend approval, then the advice is we shouldn't put them on as reasons for refusal. So again, having said that, the first reason for refusal is fairly significant in that it refers to all the aspects that add up and contribute the harm to the Marston Park registered park and garden and the Titherington farmhouse, which are the 2 heritage assets which this development, we say as officers, does have a strong and harmful negative impact, which is why we're recommending refusal. Again, you've heard about the changes to the access, which Carlton showed you in his presentation, so that's why that's not a reason for refusal. So a lot of the matters which were previously included were technical objections, which effectively are now capable of being resolved if the local planning authority wish to grant approval for this application. So I hope that's a useful walkthrough of the background and where we've got to today and why we're here today, again, considering this application. Turning to Councillor Sully's questions, I think the biggest challenge that we have as a local planning authority is how we can be confident that some of the harms that still remain and need to be resolved, how we can ensure that they're complied with. And as a local planning authority, the control mechanisms we have are to use planning conditions, and we can draft planning conditions which provide short timeframes for instance, the access to be provided in a manner which the Highway Authority find acceptable. We can use a short time frame for the provision of the foul drainage and to make sure that there isn't any pollution going into the brook at the southern end of the site. Probably the one that we shouldn't rely on a condition to control would be the mitigation with regards to the BNG and the ecological mitigation. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, it's on land that the landowner, the applicant, doesn't have control over. We have received a draft unilateral undertaking. It's only draft, it's not signed, and that means that it doesn't have any legal standing. If there was a signed, executed unilateral undertaking from the landowner that set out their agreement to a specific scheme of planting, to a specific time frame, to a specific detail on what will be planted when and how it would be looked after in future years, that could provide us with some I guess peace of mind that part of the mitigation could be delivered. But at the moment we don't have that, which is why we've included that as a second reason for refusal. and in our view, that in itself does not outweigh the harm. But obviously, that's something that, as a committee, you might have a different view on.
Okay, going on from that, Simon. Are you saying that we should be looking at it as a woodland, and we are deciding whether it would be okay to chop down a woodland for a family? Is that it, to cut it short, or is that too simple?
It is effectively that, but it's not so much that it's a woodland. It's part of a registered historic park and garden that sits as a bigger piece of, if you like, landscape infrastructure, which is valuable because it's part of the setting to the heritage asset in its, and it is also a heritage asset in its own right. So, if you like, the level of harm that the unauthorised works have delivered are significant, they're substantial.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Ashton wanted to come in back along. Are you still wanting to come in, Steve?
Yes. If I can summarise it in my head, is that we're working within a framework that we have some latitude here, but we weigh up the harms against the benefits, or the benefits, substantial benefits, and the fact that it's effectively a substantial harm to the woodland because of its, not just because of the woodland, because of its setting. I can't see that this is any other reason than a black and white argument to refuse here. I take the reasons for I mean, how many planning applications have I heard where it's going to cause mental health problems, it's going to cause these other things, but against this block of arguments, I can't see anything can stack up against this, and therefore I would like to propose to go with the officer's recommendations.
Okay, we've got a proposal. Do we have a seconder or any other view? Yes, Ewan. You're seconding?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yes, of course you can.
I think that's one of the best speeches you've ever given, Simon. It was like, I think someone said 9 minutes over there. But I think you really, you did present the nuances of the situation we're in. I didn't say it was about circumstances to do with mental health. My esteemed colleague, I was saying about someone having a home, you know, and also I wanted to make the point that I wasn't basing my decision on my views on what might happen, if you know what I mean. But obviously you presented why that was important to consider the harms. So, but I hope people understand that it was quite layered. I may not be the most eloquent speaker, but it was much more layered. I just find the argument of, I really respect my colleagues over here because they are very experienced in planning, but I just find it difficult when I hear about precedents and things that may happen. I can't make my decisions based on that. So that was what I was trying to get across. But I do appreciate what you said, and I did listen very intently to it. And I do think, I just want to quickly say that we have an applicant that is engaging and has given their side of it, and we're all humans here in this room. But I do feel that there is a case. The officer is our expert and is here to guide us. And on balance, I do think I may have to go in that direction.
Thank you, Councillor Demery.
Thank you. Some of this is a point of order, really. I want to ask a question. This was called in by the head of planning. Is that usual? Is that within the Constitution? Because I imagine, yes, that's a straight answer. No, because it wasn't called in by the parish or the ward councillors. I'm not sure that this conversation needed to happen, because I think the case is fairly clear. There's subject to judicial review. The Forestry Commission have challenged it. Natural England have challenged it. The Parish Council and the officers now suggested we refuse it. I would like to sort of spin the question around and ask the officers, as they sometimes ask us, what legal reasons might we have for turning round your decision, your refusal?
Well, can I come in here? Because I think this was agreed to come to this council by Councillor White, who discussion with the officers. No? Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, it's stated in the report, actually, councillors, it was referred by the head of planning for reasons of transparency and fairness.
Yeah.
And again, if you look at the constitution in terms of the scheme of delegation and the route that planning applications can take to arrive before you for consideration, this is one of them. Can I suggest that actually you've got a recommendation which has been seconded, and that you take a vote on that, and if anybody wishes to have a conversation about process, that they come and speak to Nicky or myself after the meeting.
Well, I'd just like to finish with the final point, is that in having this discussion on something which is I didn't get an answer on whether or not we had a legal reason for overturning it, but I also feel for the applicant, who I think has come here today, and despite the fact you say you're not good at public speaking, you spoke very well, and so did your neighbour. But you know, we've had to discuss something which I wonder the legal ramifications if we didn't refuse this, because there are so many issues about the tree felling and I think we may have offered the applicant some false hope in bringing her here today and waiting all this time to speak. It's been a very, very difficult. It would be very, very difficult to do anything but refuse this, and I do question why it needed to come to this council.
Well, I take your point, but I was speaking to Councillor Wake, and she made it, talking through this with her, and she made it quite clear she thought it ought to be as transparent as possible. And as it's could be considered contentious, it should be a matter decided by councillors and not by a member of staff behind the scenes. And I can't disagree. Helen, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, just quickly, if we do refuse this, and it's looking that way, can I ask that there was something else that Councillor Dunk said, and I've read it somewhere else, that last time it was refused, the applicants were given 6 months to appeal, and I think they appealed on the last day of the 6 months, something like that. This time, apparently, we only need to give 1 month to appeal. Is that right? And can we instruct that? Can that be part of the same refusal, or how does that get decided, whether it's 1 month or 6 months?
The Town and Country Planning Act provides for 6 months for an appeal to be lodged against the refusal of planning permission. This case is slightly different because it's actually the time agreed for the appellant's opportunity to appeal is established by the High Court through the stay of the injunctive proceedings. So we don't have to worry about it as a planning authority in issuing a decision on this planning application, because the time frame will be set out for them in the injunctive proceedings.
Thank you. Okay, Adam would like a word.
Just to say thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And I think this has been beneficial for the council to see both sides of the argument. I know there's arguments from the parish council that we shouldn't be, and Councillor Dimmer, we shouldn't be here talking about this. But I think it's been quite useful, and I think it's been valuable for the planning process in this council to hear this. And I have every sympathy with the applicants and their situation and their need for homes. And I agree with Councillor Ashton that I think the problem is the loss of woodland, the heritage or harm of the registered park and garden, which is within, and it may set a precedent if we allowed this, because it's quite a serious matter to fell without permission and live on a site with this level of landscape and heritage harm, and the planning system doesn't tend to allow this. It doesn't look kindly on that, and I think that's a problem with this. If it wasn't here, there would be other issues, and it may be something we could give permission for. But because it's here, because it's it was within a registered parking garden, and woodland was felled, and there's an injunction, and all the other non-planning stuff, I think the only thing we can do is refuse. So is it time for a vote?
Okay, can we go to the vote then? I think we've had a big debate. It's been proposed and seconded. We're all happy? Proposed and seconded, we accept the officer's recommendation. And so can we have a vote? Is that unanimous? Okay, so that is refused. Officer's recommendation, thank you very much. And I think that's the last one of those. So I think we go on to the appeals report. Does anybody want to? Oh, yes.
I'll have a quick chat through that. Thanks, Chair. There's a couple of appeals decisions on the agenda. We'd also note that we've had the Selwood decision that came through on Thursday, so it's not in the report pack because that had already been published. So if members wanted to read through that decision and come back with any questions and we can raise it next meeting, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, it has been permitted is the key issue. So those numbers can be amalgamated into the 5-year housing land supply position over time. So when that's next reviewed, it's reviewed annually. So it's the last one was reviewed in July of last year. So when that comes in, they might put some of those numbers into our 5-year housing land supply position, but it's not likely to make a huge. We're not likely to suddenly have a 5-year housing land supply just to manage those expectations.
So can I just clarify? You mean the Selwood Garden Community proposal for 1,700 homes near Frome?
That's exactly right. Yes, thank you. Okay, so if we go back to agenda item 9, so there's two appeal decisions on the same site for doors and windows that have been allowed. So it's a planning application and a listed building application. So the inspector didn't see a huge concern in terms of the legibility of the existing barn. There's another one, appeal 3, which is in Stoke St Michael, which is permission in principle for one dwelling. So that was dismissed because there was insufficient information to demonstrate that the impact on bats would be acceptable. And appeal item 4 is Station Road, which was allowed. So it's a single dwelling. So the inspector found that there was reasonable access to services, and although the character and amenity harm was identified, that site was assessed in the tilted balance, as we know, and that appeal was allowed. Does anyone have any questions on any of those? Let me know.
Any questions on any of those? No? Thank you very much. I think we're done, are we? Marvellous. Well, thanks everybody for seeing through